Hello there. Happy. Hang on, these sneeze. Um, Happy almost end of the year. Happy beginning of the week. Happy tomorrow's New Year's Eve. And welcome. I'm gonna do a short little topic for 20 or 30 minutes or so, and then I will open up the panel. I thought today was my appointment with that workplace, but it's actually tomorrow. So the fries that were supposed to happen today are going to happen tomorrow. And then I'm going to come home from that and we're going to get our New Year's Eve started. It's also Amnesty Day tomorrow. So if you're a halfway normal, sane person and not a hopeless drama troll, and you were blocked by me in the past, I'm going to release you tomorrow. And yeah, it'll happen tomorrow. I'm gonna start my New Year's Eve with the fries, so I got my days mixed up. um, I'm gonna release all the trolls tomorrow, so they'll be able to celebrate with us and participate as long as they're able to last. The rules still stand, so if they break it or fuck it up for themselves, they're going right back on block. But I will give them that one little crack of a chance tomorrow. Okay, this is something I've been wanting to do for a while, and it's going to be based on an essay from Northrop Frye, who was a professor at University of Toronto about a generation before Jordan Peterson. He was a literature professor, and he studied literature, stories, myths. He helped to develop something called archetypal criticism. Yes, the gift, that's me trying to become a more loving person. That is my gift to all of the trolls. Um, so today what I want to do is just lay down a few basic concepts. And then next year, or later this week, I will actually start diving into the essay itself. So the two things, the title of the stream today is called From Myth to Logic. And I'm gonna have to, yeah, well, I'm a Christian Satanist, so I'm balancing out the polarities. Um, I'm gonna have to go off of comments to do this. I can already tell. Okay, I'm gonna stop looking at the screen while I do the topic, and then I'll rejoin and go over comments. So it's called From Myth to Logic, and what my ultimate hope for this is, because you know me, I like to be practical. I'm not just giving you nerdy stuff just for informational purposes. Um, my hope is by the end of all of this, we will have a better awareness of the stories that we tell each other, that we tell ourselves, that we talk about here on YouTube and on social media, and have some way of maybe classifying or categorizing those stories to help us understand if we're going to tell stories, which it seems that we are, and it's not avoidable that we're going to tell stories. So if that's one activity, a primary activity that humans engage in, having an awareness of what type of stories we're telling ourselves and why we're telling ourselves those stories and how we came to tell ourselves those stories and the purpose we're trying to accomplish with those stories. Maybe by the end of all this, we'll have some better understanding of that so that when we are telling a story, we can know what kind and to what purpose. So I guess the first thing I want to do is look at, I've talked before about Carl Jung's concept of directed and mythological thinking. Um, Directed thinking is active, it's purposeful, it's logical, it's goal-oriented. The mythological type is more symbolic, spontaneous, imagistic, etc. So as we look at these stories, the two main types they're going to divide into is the mythological type and the logical type. The important thing to keep in mind when looking at these two types is that they did not arise in human history simultaneously. The mythological type preceded the logical type, and the logical type arose from within the mythological type, but it's a very specific type of thinking, distinct from the mythological type. So most humans in history, most cultures we look at, you're going to be looking at a mythological type of thinking. The logical type of thinking is something very specific that has historical roots in classical Greece, primarily Athens. You also have the Ionian natural philosophers, the sophists, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle. Those were the figures that were fundamental to development of this logical type of thinking. And then the rest of culture kind of took it over from there. But we will get to that when we actually start looking at the essay. Today, I just want to get maybe a clear understanding of what these two types of thinkings are, however they arose. So let's look at myth and the mythological type. Before we do that, well, let's look at the definition of myth, or the etymology of it, rather. It comes from the Latin mythos, which comes from the Greek mythos, mythos. They're not quite sure where the origin of the word myth comes from, but it means something like speech, thought, word, discourse, conversation, a story, a saga, a tale, anything delivered by word of mouth. Merriam-Webster has it as, again, for mythos, an utterance, speech, discourse, tale, narrative, fiction, legend, etc. So, a lot of human communication for thousands and thousands of years between humans has been verbal communication. Part of that verbal communication has been this mythic type of storytelling, passing stories, tales, speech between humans onto each other. That's what we're going to look at. And the social role that evolved over the years, at least in its modern form, whose primary job it is to look at that kind of stuff, is the scholar or the critic or the academic. Northrop Frye is going to use the term critic, so that's the term I'm going to use. I'm going to read one quote from the essay, and then we'll look at a few other quotes from some other sources. Frye says that the whole subject of which criticism forms a part is the study of how society produces, responds to, and uses its myths, its stories, its tales, in which the poetic structures are central. So by poetic structures, he means something like literary, artistic, perhaps religious, mythological. So out of all the verbal communication and storytelling that humans do, these artistic, literary structures are the central forms of those myths. This subject, he says, has not yet been defined, but it would embrace large segments of psychology, anthropology, philosophy, history, and comparative religion, as well as criticism. So it's a interdisciplinary study of looking at these stories, how they get produced, how we respond to them, and how we use them. And we're going to look at it from a historical perspective, but we're going to take it into the modern world and see how we are continuing to use these stories and producing them and responding to them. So we have a definition of what myth is, at least broadly. And we have an idea of what we're trying to learn and study, or what we're trying to learn when we study these myths. Northrop Frye, for some of his framework, draws on a 18th century Italian thinker named Giambattista Vico. And Vico was one of the first thinkers of the modern age. And we're talking Enlightenment era age. post-scientific revolution. And he looked at kind of where do the stories of society come from? Particularly, so he was Christian, and he accepted the Christian version or the Christian myth as divine revelation. But he was interested in looking at societies that weren't Christian and didn't necessarily have divine revelation as their source. Where did their stories come from, and what were the purpose of their stories? So I'm going to read a quote from his famous work is called The New Science, La Scienza Nuova, and it was it was a very comprehensive look at how societies form all the way back in the prehistoric, pre-mythical eras down to today. And I'm going to just give the quote from it because I think it's going to set up, you're going to see the distinction between the two types of myths, logical and mythological, and maybe some differences between them. So here's Vico on myth making. He says, man, in his ignorance, makes himself the rule of the universe, so that as rational metaphysics teaches that man becomes all things by understanding them, imaginative metaphysics shows that man becomes all things by not understanding them. And perhaps the latter proposition is truer than the former, for when man understands, he extends his mind and takes in the things. But when he does not understand, he makes the things out of himself and becomes them by transforming himself into them. So, in Vico's theory, myth happens not when we're trying to understand something or when we're faced with something that we're able to understand. It happens when we don't understand something and or when we're faced with something that we don't have the ability to understand. And that was the situation prior to the development of logic. Most of human history, or prehistory, prehistoric history, ancient history, etc., we were faced with phenomenon that we didn't necessarily understand. And so we told ourselves stories about the phenomenon out of ourselves and our own imagination. Notice he calls one the rational metaphysics, and the other one he calls the imaginative metaphysics. And in the imaginative metaphysics, because we don't understand, we make the things out of ourselves and we become them. So we start to tell ourselves stories about things we don't understand. One clue, I would say, one indication of figuring out which type of story you're dealing with, a mythic one or a logical one, is to figure out what you're looking at. Are you looking at something unknown or unknowable, or are you looking at something known that you have the ability to understand or communicate to others? Are you looking at a fact, or are you looking at an unknown? Are you looking at something that you can communicate to others, some phenomenon that you can communicate to others, observable phenomenon, let's say, and that they could look and observe the same thing? We can broadly call that a fact. Are you looking at either lack of information, or are you looking at something that we don't necessarily have the ability to know? If you are, you're probably going to spontaneously begin to engage in this mythic type of thinking. You're going to start to speculate. You're going to start to tell yourself stories about that unknown thing. You're going to start to infer, make inferences. It can even be something as simple as, why didn't somebody respond to my email? You don't know why they didn't respond to your email. So already you're faced with an unknown. You're going to start telling yourself stories of why someone didn't send an email. You're going to guess. You're going to make inferences on what you know about the person, their past pattern of email use, why they didn't respond to your emails in the past, etc. You're going to speculate, but you're not going to ever be able to know unless that person tells you specifically why they didn't respond to your emails. So throughout our day-to-day life, there are many, many situations, I would say more situations than not, when we're faced with things that we don't know, we can't know, we don't have the ability to know, we're not in a position to find out. So it's kind of this little black box, um, dark area that we can't see into. And so our minds fill in with stories. That is the root of the mythological way of thinking. If we're faced with something that we can know, um, that's why I'm real big on evidence here, like primary sources. Show me a link, show me the actual document, show me the actual court ruling, show me the actual scientific paper, show me the book that comes from, etc. When we're faced with something we can know, or that is a fact, um, I don't know, let's take my mouse for instance. I'm capable of taking the mouse apart and figuring out how it works, playing around with it, and figuring out what makes it work. So I would say this mouse is knowable to a large extent. I can know specific things about the mouse. And logic is really good at telling us the what and the how. What are we looking at? How does it work? It's not so good at telling us the why or the what we should do with that thing. And so I think we're gonna rely more on mythological thinking when we try to answer why questions, and we're gonna rely more on logical or scientific thinking when we try to answer what and how questions. So if the question you're trying to answer is a why, you're probably faced with an unknown that you're going to instinctively resort to mythological thinking to resolve. And if you're faced with some fact or object that you can determine what it is or how it works, you're probably going to be engaged in that directive, acting, logical form of thinking. Now, um, this book, Discovery of the Mind, it's a really excellent book. It's also free on archive.org. It actually traces the historical development through the ancient Greek writings, from Homer through the Greek poets, through the drama, through the philosophers. It traces the rise of scientific thinking from mythological thinking, um, from a historical perspective. And this, one of the central chapters in it, chapter 9, is called From Myth to Logic. And I'm going to read a paragraph out of here that I think further kind of sharpens and sheds light on the two types of thinking for us. So here we go. It's by Bruno Snell. He was a German classicist. And here we go, From Myth to Logic. The cleavage between mythical and logical thought is especially striking in the explanation of natural causes, and it is also here that we can trace the historical change from mythological to logical thought at its clearest. What had first been regarded as the deed of a god, a demon, or a hero, reason presently referred to its sufficient cause. But more than that, myth reaches beyond the confines of the natural world and sees that the genesis of concepts, feelings, desires, decisions, and so forth is also associated with the intervention of the gods. So in Greece, not only the external stuff, not only like the sun rising, thunderstorms, etc., the origin or cause for that was mythological. It was the gods, but also inner things, emotions, thoughts. A lot of Greek thinking, if you had a spontaneous thought or a spontaneous impulse, a lot of that Greeks put down to the intervention of a god. That was a god that was putting that thought into your head or putting that reaction into your head, into your heart. So it wasn't only external natural phenomena that these myths were trying to explain, but also internal, what we would today call psychological phenomena. He says, in this respect, therefore, mythical causality controlled a territory which was later, after the discovery of the soul, surrendered to psychological motivation. Furthermore, mythical thought does not limit its activities to the explication of causes. It also serves to make human nature better understood. So a lot of the stories we're telling us is not necessarily to understand the outer world, but it's to understand ourselves. It's to understand other people. It's to understand our culture and our society and also help to create that culture and society. That's going to be one of the most important points of this study of myths. He says, thus it is evident that mythical and logical thought are not coextensive. Many aspects of myth remain inaccessible to logic, and many truths discovered by logic were without precedent in myth. Outside of the causal explanation of nature, to speak of a polarity of myth and logic is not quite correct, for the additional reason that myth refers to the content of thought, logic to its form. So it's when we use the words myth and logic, we're not talking about two equivalent things. When we use the word myth, we're often talking about the content of the thought, the content of the stories. When we talk about logic, we're talking about a specific form or type of story, not necessarily its content. Now, it's focused that type of thinking is focused on a specific content. But when we use the description of logical itself, we're more talking about the form that the story is taking more than the content it's directed at. Nevertheless, he said, it is better to retain the two terms because they effectively describe two stages of human thought. They do not exclude each other completely. There is room in mythical thought for much that is logical and vice versa, and the transition between the two is slow and gradual. In fact, no transition is ever fully complete. Mythical thought is closely related to thinking in images and similes. And psychologically speaking, both differ from logical thought in that the latter searches and labors, while the figures of myth and the images of the similes burst fully shaped upon the imagination. The stories kind of come to us spontaneously. This brings us to an objective difference. The truth of logical thought is something that requires to be sought, to be investigated, pondered. It is active. It's that active, directed form of thinking we talked about. It is the unknown element in a problem which must be solved with due methodical consideration of the law of contradiction, and the result must be accepted by all. The mythical images, on the other hand, reveal to us of themselves their full content and significance, and likewise the figures of the similes speak with a living tongue which needs no interpretation. The listener's understanding is no less direct than the author's acceptance of the gift of the muse or his intuition or whatever expression we might prefer. Mythical thought requires receptivity. Logical cannot exist without activity. Logic does not materialize until man has become cognizant of the energy within him and the individuality of his mind. Logical thought is unimpaired wakefulness. Mythical thinking borders upon the dream, in which images and ideas float by without being controlled by the will. I was talking about the differences between waking and dreaming the other day because of the dream that I had had that day. And it's interesting to see the same contrast show up in this. So, 2 points about logical thinking. It developed out of and after mythological thinking was already the norm. He talked about the two stages. And it's a directed, active form of thinking. It's something you have to intentionally engage in. And you have to labor. It involves work and labor. To find out the truth of something, to solve a puzzle, to work a math equation, involves you actively using your mind in a very specific way. That is not the thinking most people engage in from day to day. They engage in more this kind of mythological, image-based storytelling thinking when they're putting together their world and how the world works and what's going on in the world, etc., etc. One more thing I want to do, and then I'll wrap up. I've used this book before many times, The Passion of the Western Mind by Richard Tarnas. Understanding the ideas that help shape our view. It's also a kind of a survey of intellectual history, and it as well gives a detailed account of the development of myth to logic. The only thing I want to focus on now is he's giving a summary of the scientific worldview, and in the process he enumerates some some qualities of the human experience that fall outside of that scientific worldview. So I think if we look at this set of qualities, we can help determine which ones fall into that logical type of thinking and which ones are more the domain of the mythological type. Um, let's see, he says, in contrast to the Greeks' implicit emphasis on an integrated multiplicity of cognitive modes. So that's another important point, and Bruno Snell just said that in his, where he said we can't really draw the line between myth and logic. Even though there's some areas of myth that logic is not able to operate on, and there are truths that logic can give us that myth is not able to, there's still kind of this gray area between the two. So in contrast to that, he says, the order of the modern cosmos was now comprehensible in principle by man's rational and empirical faculties alone, while other aspects of human nature, okay, here they are, emotional, aesthetic, art, the artistic or the aesthetic, beauty, the things that move us aesthetically, ethical, volitional, which is our will, what we want to do, relational, imaginative, and epiphanic, which is like revelatory, were generally regarded as irrelevant or distortional for an objective understanding of the world. So logic is really good at things that can be rationally and empirically explored. We can observe them and we can think about them to arrive at some kind of conclusion about what we might be looking at and how those things might work. But that is not the sum total of the human experience. It's not even, I'd say, the primary subset of human experience. Human experience is comprised of emotions, things like beauty, desire, ethics, how do we relate to each other, how should we relate to each other, our will, what do we want to accomplish, what do we want to achieve, relational, how do we stand or appear in relation from one human to another, our imaginations. One second, one more. Yeah, I think those are good. Those are all parts of the human experience that this rational, empirical, logical, scientific way of looking at things can't necessarily tell us much about. It's either too vague, it's not empirically observable, it's too vague and we don't know what we're looking at, or it can't tell us how those things can or should be. So for that, we need another type of thinking when we're dealing with any of those other domains of human experience. And the only other type that we have to default to is the mythological type. And that type goes back thousands and thousands and thousands of years, almost into prehistory. And so when we're talking about those areas of human life and human nature, in the modern world, which I would say is a scientific world and a technocratic world, there's kind of a knee-jerk impulse to default to using the rational, logical, empirical, and I do it too. Like I am a big advocate of logic and rationality, but I'm also an advocate of logically and rationally knowing when that's not the appropriate tool and when not to waste your time using logic and rationality when some other type of thinking, like the mythological type, is more appropriate for your goal or will yield you better results. So I think today, the point of this whole episode was to lay those few foundation stones of the two types of thinking we're going to be looking at. Now, Fry calls both of these types myths. So the logical type is just a specialized form of mythological thinking. So once we delve into his essay, when I do the next one of this series, we're going to start looking at the different types of myths. We're going to see that there's multiple ways to classify and categorize the types of stories we tell each other. So we're going to end up with kind of a typology of stories, or types of stories and myths. But there's going to be two main types that emerge, and one is going to be this more mythological type, and one is going to be this more logical type. And you're going to be able to see the interplay between these two types of thinkings throughout history, from its origins in classical Greece all the way to the modern world, through the development of Christianity, the Middle Ages, the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, the Enlightenment, Romanticism, the modern age, modernism, postmodernism. These two types of thinkings are constantly either interweaving and kind of supporting each other, or in opposition to each other. And there's two different types of myths that are constantly coming into collision. And we can even try to trace some of those types in the world that we see today. When we look at social media, when we look at the news, when we look at what's going on around us, the same fundamental ways of thinking and the stories that they generate as we use these types of thinking are still, the tension between those two are still very much what continues to drive our culture, our society, and our modern world to this day. So I think that I've covered everything I want to cover. I'm going to catch up on comments, and then I will drop the link and we'll get our panel going. Yes, in fact, Luna, that's a great point. In every myth, there are some truths. I will go further than that and say that there are different types of truths. And logical thinking gives us one type of truth. But mythological thinking gives us a completely different type of truth that still is no less true and is still a form of truth. And so not only are there some truths in myths, I would say that myth itself is a way of delivering a certain type of truth. Let's see. Hey, Bex, what's up? Pogo, wait, what? Hank, I watched a little bit of your Talcott thing, and I saw the link that you just posted. Yes, Luna, I love this. That's one reason why verbal communication is so important, because we experience a certain little part of the world for ourselves. And as we communicate and share that with others, that's how these stories start to develop. And if enough people begin to share their little part of experience, all across the world, depending on where it's happening, we have different types of myths and cultures that form up around the stories that we tell ourselves, that we share about our individual experiences. And we kind of see that even happen here on YouTube in the Panelverse. There's a whole type of panel lore that's grown up over the years from the different stories, the different like collision of people's experience. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Like especially I'm thinking of mental illness, like from demons being the cause of mental illness to actual organic, some mental health conditions they can study with neuroscience and see like the deterioration of the brain that undergirds whatever specific condition they're looking at, like schizophrenia. Um, in fact, James Life's Talks did that debate with J.C. Urban Adventures on mental illness, and the question of is mental illness spiritual and caused by demons surfaced even then. So like that's what I'm saying, these myths don't leave us. The people that use the logical type are a very small subset of the larger society. Most human society is still going to be working off of traditional myth. I'm not familiar with that one. Let me look it up. The Medusa and the Snail. I think what's this? Ian McGilchrist has that book. Is it The Master and His Emissary, about the different. He tries to bring it to a scientific level, the different parts of the brain. The Women Who Run with Wolves. I get that confused with that. What's that movie, Dances with Wolves? Arpole, hello. Good to see you. Happy New Year. Um, Izzy Lul, an all-embracing technique. That's interesting. That does the mechanized world have a conscience? Is conscious something that Jacques Ellul is? To me, conscience is one of those domains that logic, science, and mechanization can't really tell us anything about or do anything about. Let's see, paradigms. Yeah, you could call them paradigms. You could call them myths. You could call them paradigms. You could call them worldviews. You could call them ideologies, constructs, schemas, templates. There's some kind of model, and the stories themselves are not the model, but we there's a model embedded in the stories that kind of influences how we take in and organize information. Oh yeah, the panel's opens. Let me put the link. Um, yeah, Hank, I would agree with you if you're talking about one type of truth. And if you're talking about logical scientific truth, I would say that type of truth is more than just a feeling. All right, the link should be pinned. Come on up. Okay, I'm looking at Medusa and the snail. Wow, this is interesting. It looks at something called a nudibranch sea slug and the Medusa of a jellyfish, and explores how the relationship between the two creatures can be seen as illustrating the impossibility of understanding the notion of the self. I might have to check it out. It's a collection of essays. Oh, it's from 1979. No, I've never heard of this. One source of confusion I've noticed just from having conversations is when people use the word truth and they assume it refers to one well understood thing, like that we know that we're all talking about the same thing when we talk about truth, and I don't think that's the case. Welcome.
So pretty much we're exploring the same kinds of topics right now.
Oh, hang on one second. Let me turn you up a bit.
Mic check.
You coming in a little low.
Let me tear myself up on my. No, I'm at 85. That should be good.
I have you
Let me
full
check the
blast.
StreamYard. Mic
Okay.
check.
Well, I can more or less hear you. What's
Let
up?
me.
What?
I'll turn myself up a little bit more. Oh, went down. Nope. No. That's my output.
You're good now.
Mic check. Is this good?
Yep. At least
Excellent.
to me. I'll Chad, if you could let us know if he's too loud or I'm too loud. Either one.
Yep. So pretty much we're exploring the same topic. So I like typology. We both like typology. So you said separate it into a binary thing, mythical and factual. Is that how you get it?
Are logical because
Logical?
I
Okay.
would call facts the subject of logical. It's what logical thinking is directed toward. But logic itself is just a method or technique or way of thinking in a specific way. But it works with facts and it's directed at facts and learning the truth of facts.
So there's a spot where there's like a singularity. So in video games, it's built on both logic and myth. So there's a singularity there.
Like in the design of the games themselves.
Yeah, designing the games themselves. Video games are all executed by processors, and they run on cold hard logic. But then you can build myths on top of them.
Like the content that
Yes.
shows up in the game. The
Yeah.
the, the characters, the storylines.
Yeah. So just from my heard so far, there's a singularity there in the model. I'm not saying it's a bad. I don't even understand. I just going by what I heard just
Well,
now.
even earlier than that, we're going to talk about writing was the same way. Writing, the technology of writing allowed. It was a technology for capturing and transmitting myth in a way other than the oral, which you had to be
Ooh, that's a good
directly
point.
present for.
Yeah.
TML, what's up? You still feeling blueberry today?
Oh yeah, feeling puffed up.
You feeling what's going on?
Yeah, but I love this topic. You know, lots of avenues to explore there. Right, especially since the mind is composed of two sort of avenues, right, which is imagination and experience, right? And they both sort of intersect, and you have to use myth with imagination because there's never enough information to figure out things like universals and all those types of things. And then in terms of experience, you have to use logic because you can never get all the facts in, right? So you have to organize the information that you have on the table, right? And that requires logic, right?
Yeah,
So it's like, and I often say like more experience you have, the less imagination you have. The more imagination you have, the less experience you have. All right.
and as you get older, because humans have a developmental arc to them. In childhood, you have more imagination that gradually becomes experience as it
Right.
interacts with the real world. And when you get older, you have all of that actual experience in the form of wisdom, but you still have to organize it into some kind of story form. So you still have to use your imagination to organize that experience. And historians say the same thing. Once history gets long enough, like with 10 million years of human history, we're not going to be able to study it as data. We're going to have to organize it into some form of fiction just to understand it. And I think our brain has to do the same thing with our memories as we accumulate more and more of them.
Yeah. And then I think that science has a mythos, but it projects its mythos into the future, right? Whereas, religion has its mythos in the past. Right?
Yes, you make a good point because this idea of progress, that there's a progression to human history and time and development, is actually more mythical than scientific. And there's a biblical pattern to it. And I think science, or not the technique of science, but the scientific culture that grew up around the use of logic, takes it for granted. They take something like progress as a fact, and I think it's more myth than fact.
Yeah, because Hegel meant his logic to be the dialectic. So that's a little bit different way of looking at logic, is that logic is built-in progress attached to it. Right?
Like with thesis, antithesis, synthesis.
Yeah.
Sean, what's up? Are you is your
Yeah,
mic
but
working
let's
today?
say stop everybody.
Yeah. What's up?
1, 2, 3. Hello.
Yep, you good?
Yeah, I'm a hardcore atheist, nihilist, rationalist, logical guy. Uh, so let's say the future we're all like logic. There's no more myth. We'll just keep the myth as a fun part there. We won't take it seriously. But the problem is, currently now we're in a tricky situation because we're a lot of people with logic are saying that religion and other things are part of myth, and that the religious people don't like that, so they don't want to call it myth. So that's why there's a fight going on.
Well, I
That's
think
what I
it's
think.
the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know. As Socrates said. So essentially, as you find out more about how the universe works, the science and all that stuff. You add more information to the table. The realm of myth expands. It doesn't get smaller. It actually expands. Like more stuff gets put in because there's more mysteries abound, right? Because now you're looking at the deeper mysteries, right? Than you've ever looked at before, right? So it's like you bring in all the things of God, and now you have aliens and the myths of science fiction and all that stuff attached to all of the new myths like such as transhumanism and all that type of stuff. Right? So they have new myth building, right? So the capacity for myth is not going away. I think it's
Yeah, I was gonna
expanded.
say the same thing. We're never gonna not
Yes,
have
but you
myth
can't
or
use
leave
myth.
myth behind. We're just going to be less aware of what in our thinking is myth.
Yeah, it's more Jungian, or
Yeah,
Yes.
but you
And
can't
Sean, I
use
want to
myth.
point out, you say you're this cold, hard logic creature, but when it comes to the environment, you're facing a complete unknown because nobody knows the future. And so this narrative that you've told yourself about climate change and what's going to happen, it's not testable until it actually comes here, until it actually happens. So that
Well,
is
scientists
myth.
can
That
build
you are
models.
you are telling yourself a myth about climate change and the environment.
No, scientists can build models that can predict the future quite well. I mean,
yeah,
we
yeah.
can
So
predict the future better with science.
Yeah, but when you talk about the environment, you talk about more than just specific models that scientists have built, and that's the mythic part.
Yeah. In fact, I was on
Well,
Scholar
obviously,
Fiction
science.
today talking about the same subject, and I was going over the fictional theism thing. So, like, a lot of hardcore atheists have notions of God, notions of religious people, but it's not actually what they have. So they have their own myths, but they use a deny. They
right,
use a nor instead of an or. So, or nan. They are deniers. They have their own myths, but they also deny them. But it's not
right.
doesn't even apply to
Yeah,
the
but
actual people.
Well, we're gonna bust them
yeah,
all that when this is through.
you can't use myth though with the truth of myth. Let's say we all believed in myth and religion. There was no science. You won't be able to find the truth in any. Well, you could. Let's say there was no scientific method, no logic, and we all believed in myth and what else?
Do
Religious
you know?
stuff.
Do you
There wouldn't
know
be much progress
Catholics
going on.
invented science pretty much? Catholics and Muslims and Hindus invented science.
Yeah, it's like the noble lie. Like it's like even if the people don't rule in democracy, you have to make the people believe that the people are in charge, or else the system can't work. Right? So it's like the people have to believe in this noble lie. Like that's the myth of the autocratic age or the scientific age, right? Is that we all tacitly agree to the program of secular humanism and scientific progress, right? Whether or not we right necessarily ascribe to its principles. Right?
Democracy is one form of myth. I mean, it's not based on anything
Right,
scientifically factual. It's a
right. Like it's
story
not
we tell
provable. Right,
ourselves.
exactly.
And Shaw, what were you going to say about if we didn't have logic and it was just myth?
Yeah, we would have chaos. Like, I mean, we need to balance the force. I guess.
Well,
I
but
guess I don't want to say that myth is not useful. It is useful. It gives us entertainment. I mean, most of the things we do in
it
life
gives
is
us
not
meaning too.
logical or yeah. I'm not saying that fiction is not meaningful. I'm not saying art is not meaningful. I think everything has meaning in it. But if you want to find the truth, the best way to find truth is using the scientific method. And
A
I don't
certain
know
kind of
what other
truth.
tool we have to find. Yeah, but what do you mean by certain kind of truth? With what you're talking about? Let's say the future. Can you use mythological truths to predict the future? You can't really. Scientific
I
is
don't think
better.
anybody can predict other than like I forgot the philosophical term for it, but things like we know the sun's
Hey,
going to come
hey,
up. We can
Sean.
pretty much predict the sun's going to come up.
Hey, Sean.
Especially like
You,
like
you know
like
about
Gene
this, right?
Roddenberry. Right? Like Gene Roddenberry. Right? Like he projects myths into the future, and then he predicts scientific inventions down the road. Right? Like that. I think that's an example, right?
Yeah, but that's just imagination.
Yeah, but
Like,
but as I was saying earlier, like the greater essence of myth is imagination, right?
yeah, I think so. I
So
think myth comes from it's imagery, images,
right,
imagination. It
right,
generates images. It's
right.
the thinking part of us that thinks in images.
Yeah,
And
I agree.
Sean, we have
Yeah.
we have myth without logic because logic developed later in human history. So we can look at all the societies before logic even developed. We can even look at Greece itself before logic developed. I wouldn't say it was all complete chaos.
Yeah. So for accessibility purposes, I'm gonna tell Sean that I'm pointing at an AE Walter Ray Tail deck. So so you can't predict things using mythical ways.
Do you
This
want
is
to do a
literally
reading for us? Is it hologram?
yeah. This one's a
Oh
hologram.
wow.
Not right now, but I was just pointing out,
I
Sean,
did my
do you have a
reading the other day.
counterexample?
They have an online version, and
Yeah.
it's pretty freaky.
But yeah, I was just pointing out a counterexample. So,
Yeah, science develops models, and one of the purpose for those models is prediction. But that's all it is. It's probabilistic. And that's just one type of truth.
Yeah, I think model and theory is where the essence of myth, which is imagination, seeps into the scientific. Obviously, right? Because
Yeah, and we
it
even
would
see
have to.
things like cosmology, how cosmology was imagined before science was able to come and refine it into the version of cosmology we have today. And then the old cosmology is used for more artistic and mythological purposes than scientific but it didn't go away.
Yeah, I think like in the 1800s when they had the scientific enlightenment, for 200 years of that, right? Then they started creating new myths. They started creating stuff like ghosts and aliens and vampires and stuff, even right? And all this stuff was coming out of the occult. So there was actual writings about these things, right? Like in the 1800s, so it's fascinating, that
I mean, I
that
think today we see a lot of modern myth making in the conspiracy theories that are
oh
going
yeah,
around.
yeah,
Those are
definitely,
it's an unknown that people are generating all kind of stories about.
yeah, it's
exactly.
hyperstition.
Yeah, that's why I went with that joke. Pogo's ate my email because that's just a myth. It
Yeah,
doesn't.
Oh,
that's
pogos themselves are myth.
Well, Pogo means what called privately owned, government operated.
Oh.
yeah. Have you heard of this idea from Mark Fisher about forgotten futures?
No.
No,
Where like he's got this idea from hauntology, right, from postmodernism, right, that basically is like this idea that like in the 80s they projected ideas of what the future was going to be like, right, and they don't go away, they just kind of stick around, with like how we experience the actual future, so like it's like a forgotten future, like it's like a model of how the future was supposed to be that just kind of lingers around,
Well, even I was listening to some old David Bowie and Pink Floyd from the early '70s, and they talk about the same shit. Like David Bowie wrote songs about uh,
exactly.
being in the system and the government control and um, conspiracies, and Pink Floyd wrote a bunch of them too. So I don't like our myths are not that original and they're not that innovative. It's the same stories people were coming up with in the early '70s. And if you
Yeah,
go back and
they
look at
say that religion.
dystopian literature, they have science fiction dystopias that go all the way back to the Victorian age that talk about government takeover and mind control and all that other stuff.
Yeah,
Hey,
they say
thought
that religion
experiment.
copies from other myths. So the oldest myths have been copied in newer myths, and it keeps
Yes,
on patterns keep on.
Fry gets into that. We're going to talk about that. Yes, the earliest myths get perpetuated in different forms as new myths arise in reaction to those. But at the core of any culture or society is this body of stories that eventually become the mythology of that society or culture. Hey, Hank, is your debate on? Did he accept it? I saw he went on your show last night.
um, pretty much we already said we're gonna do it. We just didn't schedule it yet.
Who is
Can I
this?
make a condition? If he loses, he has to cut his hair. Cut that hair.
No, his hair looks great. I don't want
I
him to
don't.
do that.
I disagree. As a gay, I disagree.
Who you debating, Hank?
I would
He has
love to.
women fawning over him. I mean, I was
Have
telling
you
some celebrity
seen the
to do that
women?
poll.
Have you seen the women?
Yeah, I mean, what's the name?
I don't want to name names. Starts with a M, but
Eternal's freaking hot. So
All right. Well, if you think he's
What are you going to be
Mac
debating
Daddy.
about?
Um,
Oh,
no
Jack's hair, a
secrets.
non-scientific truth that only myth could resolve.
Yeah, what I'm gonna debate Jack on is no secrets. He thinks the world will be better off
You're
if
gonna debate
secrets were
Mike
not legal.
Alcott?
And I think
You can't run modern society with no secrets. We would
Who's
the
gonna
Earth would
moderate?
destroy itself.
probably you
Okay,
could
I'll
be
moderate.
Jeff. Either you or Jeff, probably. I would guess.
Yeah, I think I moderated one of your debates with
Yes, you moderated
Brad
my
Colton.
debate against J.R. Busk. Which,
How'd that go?
oh well, he doesn't. He stopped running his channel, so I'm going to declare victory.
Oh, yeah. I don't mind trying my hand at moderating either. Well, at least make him trim his beard. At least that. If he loses, the beard gets trimmed.
I think he should trim his beard either if he wins or loses.
I do
So,
too, but losing would be an incentive to. You know me, I'm not one to tell grown men how to groom themselves.
alright. Well, I'm trying to get Denizen or Base Oracle to help train him because I think I win having too easy time beating him. I don't want to make it. It's just, so
Yeah,
I want
Mike,
him
I
to
think
get.
I remember.
Yeah, so I want him to train some, so I don't want to embarrass him and stuff. So
Get
not
y'all
but not too
shots
much.
ready for the Talcott drinking game. Every time he spurgs out.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't. Well, if he does spurg out, well, I well it will make me look better if I'm magnanimous about it. So that's why I want him to train so he has a chance of beating
You gotta
me
lock
rather than
him in.
just yeah.
You gotta tell
If
him
he
before
wants, he
time.
can watch my debate with Andrew because
Yeah,
Andrew
you
was
gotta tell
spurging
him
out
no
the whole
rage
time.
quitting, because he will rage quit.
Oh,
I'm not
Talcott
gonna say
will.
no rage quitting, but I will be prepared so I can just go ahead and do a some stump speech if he does happen to rage quit. I'll be prepared for that.
You
Well,
gotta.
I hope y'all get this set up. Let us know.
Yeah, I'll let you know when we schedule it. I was just busy all in December, so I couldn't do it then.
Good stuff.
But you said you watched my show yesterday, both of you.
Yeah, I saw some of it.
Yeah, you were reviewing one of his episodes, and then he came on at some point.
Yeah, I reviewed a few of his episodes. Pretty much, first of all, I went after his rogues gallery because they're higher priority. They needed to be roasted, and they haven't. Other than Mad Mystic, none of them popped up and said anything to me. I don't know if anyone talked about me either yet, but I made sure to notify them all on YouTube. It's kind of annoying to do that. So if you want to add someone's channel, you have to go into your editor and use the type in the name. Then you have to use the dialog box to link it because just pulling the string in won't actually notify them. So that's kind of annoying. That's why I had to push it back a little bit, other than finding all the timestamps I wanted to talk about. But I notified Talcott's Rogue Scout, all the ones I attacked yesterday, which was McNemesis, which you both met already, Officer Snaps,
Not getting any
Mad Mystic, and I think then I did Talcott.
I don't think I know Mad Mystic.
Oh yeah, I haven't met her yet.
Oh, it's a lady.
Yeah, it's a
Do what,
lady.
Sean? Sean?
Do you have any questions, Sean?
I thought I heard you try to say something.
Yeah, I thought I heard that too.
Maybe his
But-
mic went out.
Yeah, then I did Telcom self-order disagreement, and we just analyzed it. It was so meta. It was great.
Meta myths.
Yeah, exactly.
So he understands that I'm a good sport. I'm not trying to troll him. I just want the best results. So
Does he? You sure you're not trying to troll him? Just a little bit?
of course I troll. Oh, you a little bit, but I don't take it too far.
Okay.
Which is why you allow me back on your shows.
Oh, yeah, I'm not worried about you, but I meant him. He might.
Hello?
He might not take it that way. Yeah, hey, Sean. Well, you were there. You
So
keep coming
Jeff,
in and yeah, can you hear? Yeah, we can hear you sometimes.
I turned off a little of you were talking about
Oh,
different types of truths, ways to find the truth. Can you explain? Because I only know the best way is the scientific method, but can you explain to me other types of ways to find the truth?
well, and maybe meaning is a better word for it, but I think there are truths about ourselves and about other people or and between people that are not necessarily scientifically um, studyable or observable, but that they still like what is a marriage? What is being a parent? What is
Yeah,
love? What is
right,
justice? Those are certain types of truths that I don't think science can necessarily answer for us.
right. And if people don't believe in them, it's pretty destructive. Like people need to believe in maybe love more than they believe in the scientific method. You know what I mean? Obviously, right?
I'm trying. It and like also like the political certain political ideologies and gender and racism and whatever shows up in political narratives that doesn't necessarily have a factual basis around it, but it's still a form of truth for a lot of people. Truth versus evil.
Yeah, like the scientific method can't necessarily prove like if you eat that synthetic food pill, like you won't turn into a blueberry, right?
Some truths are socially determined, and some are scientifically determined. They're determined through inquiry, experimentation, validation by other parties, etc. There's an investigative method for determining that type of truth, but not all truths can be determined that way. And so
Yes.
some of them are determined individually and socially and
Yeah,
culturally.
lots of so-called empiricists can't tell the difference between the two, and that's how they keep getting tripped up.
Well, that's what I'm here for. That they're eventually they're going to be able to. Hopefully,
Yep.
keep watching. Watch this space. I'm seeing good and evil, Mr. B, but I'm not seeing anything about truth versus evil, and I'm seeing the truth about evil.
So let's say we hypothetically we had a world with only logic and science and atheist, and we would still have meaning. What else? Everything, all our morals will come from scientific stuff. Uh,
How would science tell us determine what our morals are? And where would that meaning come from? It would probably come from stories. It would come from movies, TV shows.
Yeah, I have a
Um,
question. In that world, would video games exist? So, in the logic, scientific only world, would video games exist, Sean?
yes, because they're all nerds. It would be a world full of nerds, and they would need their video games because that is one place nerds get their meaning from. Because what's in the video game? Stories.
Yeah.
They're playing through stories. They're playing characters, and they're playing through stories.
So I can I have a hard time conceiving that world, Sean.
But I'm interested in this idea of scientific morality because that seems like a myth.
well, we use the scientific method to find the best way to do stuff for moral reasons or something.
Yeah, like how? What?
Yeah, I mean, science is very expensive. I couldn't do a research study to find the best Linux operating system because it's just too expensive, and by the time they figure it out, they'd be 5 or 6 versions ahead. So science can't do everything.
Like what's an example where you think science has been able to like for ethics or situational to be first of all, but like where science has been able to tell us how to ethically behave.
Dude, I'm talking way out of my league. Like, I should, um, but yeah, you can use science to make the right decisions. Like, do study of how much it hurts or something.
Like, what about May?
Basically,
Like,
what's called utilitarianism or something. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, you need to
what
read the
about
manual Kant.
a euthanasia or abortion? Can science tell us the right choice to make in those situations?
Well, in the future, we'll be able to predict your chemicals. Like in the future, I'm saying like this, like in the future, we'll be able to microchip in the brain, and we'll be able to read your emotions and feelings and stuff before you're
Okay.
even thought of it.
So,
That's
okay,
the
let's even if it can, let's say
crazy.
it can. So what? What is that gonna tell us or do?
I mean, we have a
We'll
better
predict
way to read our
the
I
emotions
mean,
than
feelings.
the camera.
your house cat can read your emotions before you're even aware of them too. So
But we'll be able to
let's
predict
just say we
exactly what
get
you
that
want to
ability.
do.
What does that mean? How does that change society or culture? What does that mean once we have it? Is there going to be anything different
I mean
about
that
us?
everything we do is already pre-known, and everything will be predicted, so there'll be no more pain or something else.
I'm an
This is
indeterminist, though.
this is way out of my league.
Sounds
So,
like a myth.
Yep.
yeah, it sounds like a myth
That's
to
what I
me.
was going to say too. For Mr. Rational Logical.
Yeah, but you said
See,
myths are
Sean,
true
myths not
too,
going
so there you
anywhere.
go.
Even that passage I read from that book today said they're inextricably linked, even within the same person. You can't really draw the line.
Right, right, like,
We
Yeah, but
use
you believe
both
in myth
ways of
too.
thinking for different things.
right,
We
right.
both
Yeah, of
we
course,
all
everyone
believe in
does.
myth.
Right, right,
Your myth is
exactly.
right, my myth is right, your myth is wrong. There you go.
It,
No. Can you scientifically prove that that all the pain will be eliminated in the future?
I mean, do you understand what pain is? It's a signal to notify my body that something's wrong.
yeah, I mean,
Right,
science can eliminate pain now. Today we have drugs that can
right. So
eliminate pain.
that's just a myth that you can't scientifically prove. Therefore, your myth is wrong. Right. It's just as wrong as everybody else's, at least. Yeah.
But yeah, you
My
may be
vocabulary.
outgunned. We all been debating each other for like a year and a half. So
Do you think we've made the world any better? Or have people come away better or more educated after a year and a half of this?
I have.
I guess I have too, in a way. Not a way that I could scientifically quantify. So it would be my own little story version of how I think I improved. No, science can't do anything. All it can do is give us information about stuff.
Well, according to our wars. So basically, if you use science to like kill everything on our planet, then there's no wars left. I mean, there's no wars on
I guess that's
Venus.
one way to do it, just eliminate all
Yeah,
life.
yeah. So there's no wars on Venus that I know of. So, but it's a positive thing. No, I'd rather keep some life around.
I mean, wars happen for a reason, for many
Exactly.
reasons. Partly related to human nature, but partly related to situational and practical factors. Most people in wars don't just fight for the fun of it. They're fighting for some specific goal.
Yeah, and you need to understand their perspective, or you can't end the war.
Oh, I hope we get Helena today.
Yeah. Are you the famous one? How'd you live so long?
She, sometimes she tries to come up, but she can't quite connect. So maybe today.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Fine.
ma'am.
Oh
Wow, you
wow!
can hear me?
Finally. Yes.
Oh my God.
Loud and
Okay,
clear.
great. Now you don't need to see me because that's a secret.
Yeah,
But
that's fine. That-
Jack Talcott doesn't like secrets.
Well, this is not
oh,
his panel.
That's correct.
right. Wow,
Welcome,
okay.
welcome.
Yeah, it's so nice to see all of you, and I hope everything is
Hello.
going well for all of you.
Thank you.
And I don't know. I don't know. So I was in chat a little bit, and I don't understand. I don't understand when people started pitting science against morality and religion, and
Right.
they're not related. They're not really related at all.
Well, new atheism. That's pretty much where it really.
Oh, it started way before that, back in
Yeah,
the
but
scientific
Yeah.
revolution days.
yeah, I started earlier, but
Well,
that's not the current wave. New atheism is the current wave of that.
right, right. Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint exactly when that started to happen, but no, it's like, okay, so during COVID, it's like, you must believe in the science. It's like, I know, but your vaccine is only a few months old. And it's like, look, it's just science is science. It's not like a display of your morality or your mettle as a human being. It's none of that.
Right.
So I don't understand why the two are being conflated. I guess, I don't know. I guess some people, when they don't have, I don't know, if they don't believe in anything higher than themselves, they go for science. So they use that as a replacement. Maybe.
And
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's science as a reflection of human potential. So what's replacing the religion of the God is the potential of humans themselves, and science is just one manifestation of that. So it's the belief in human empowerment or
Well,
human divinity.
uh, I don't know. We've always been an observational species, and I don't know. It hasn't helped that in universities and colleges, uh, hmm, the studies that get funded now, they're the studies that are more, I'll just say politically correct. I'll just put it that way.
Oh yeah.
And that's not really good. That's not really good. It's, I don't know. So, yeah, I just don't understand how the two are conflated. That's all.
Well, that's a good example of exactly how they get conflated, because I'd say that's more
Yeah.
Why doesn't the
myth
right
than science,
and
and
the
that's
religious
myth.
people use science?
Yeah,
The
it's
right and
the
the religious
science
people.
itself is the same, but when they interject myth or ideology into it, it gets contaminated by myth. The science doesn't work on that stuff, and that's why you get all this weird implicit bias studies and unconscious this, and because they're not scientific, they're mythical, and they're trying to subject them to the rigor and the methods of science, and it doesn't work. So
No, it
that
doesn't
that
work.
conflation, we see that conflation in what's coming out of academia right now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you have an ideology where you can't, boy, I don't want to get you in trouble, Jeff. I really don't.
Oh, with YouTube.
Yeah.
You won't get in trouble with me. I'm just worried about YouTube.
Oh, all right. All right. So if you can't define a woman, how the
That's
hell,
pretty fun.
huh?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can talk
Well,
about that. That'd be fun on YouTube.
okay. Okay. If you can't define a woman because you have an ideology where anybody who just declares there's something is truth, then how the hell can you have any medical scientific studies on biology? I don't understand that. That's
Oh,
just insane.
that's an easy one. Woman
It's easy?
is yeah. So woman's a social construct. Female is a biological construct. So I don't need to know what woman
No.
is to know what female is.
You
Are
can
are you
define a
being
woman
sarcastic?
scientifically, but what they're talking about with what
Yeah,
is a
I know what
woman
they're
is
talking about.
defining it culturally or societally. Which are those two
No,
different types of truths?
okay, so how they're defining it is stereotypically. So it's like, oh, I have long hair. I like wearing a dress. I'm a woman. No, you're not. That guy who boxed in the Olympics, he's not a woman. He's not a woman. They went by some medical some technicality, and he got in there and he punched a woman in the face a couple of times, and she had to stop. She had to stop the whole thing because, hey, if you go through male puberty, you have a male skeleton. It's heavy. It's heavier than ours. Okay? So the feeling like a woman thing, that's just a stupid. It's usually a bunch of stereotypes or some kind of. Yeah, I know. Everybody knows what a woman is. They're lying if they say they don't.
No, just some people just don't have any idea.
I agree with Helena here. Um, it's completely correct. People have known what a man and a woman is for millennia, and only in the last like 10, 15 years did people start acting confused about it. And most
Well,
of
yeah.
that is a response to once the activists got loud enough about it, a lot of people started going along with it out of fear. And they say, oh, well, yeah. And then they start saying, well, gender is cultural, sex is biological. And they know that isn't fucking true. Like when I say, hey, dude, you think that chick is pretty or something like that to another guy? I am not saying chick in some cultural bullshit sense. That is not why I said that. It's just, but if someone wants to quibble over that, they're going to do that now. Did you know?
Yeah.
Did you know they identify as a man and blah blah blah? And it's like, holy shit, right? And so
Ooh.
it's
I'm gonna feed this on itself. So, what's your scientific proof that I know what a woman is? There you go.
Well,
what's the scientific proof that we know what a woman is? It's because we made the word, and we can decide what the word is, and we've been using the word a pretty basic way for millennia.
Okay, so yeah, words can be magical, I guess sometimes in certain arenas, but no, how are children made? How do humans make babies?
Yeah, a male and a female, and they breed.
Or
That's
sperm
what
and
they
an egg.
identify as.
I don't even know if you're going to need people soon. Like you didn't in Brave New World.
Oh,
But that's a perfect example of a mythological truth. When people today talk about I'm a woman or what is a woman or I'm not, they're speaking mythically. Mythically, they're a woman. They're not speaking I'm scientifically a woman. They're speaking I'm mythologically a woman.
But the problem is, I think maybe Helena's getting at, is that in situations where the mythical part is clearly not the point, they want it to be mixed in with that, right? So there are people who will think who truly believe. I mean, these are often the activists, but they are, of course, influencing how all of this gets handled and thought about and managed lately. Is if let's say I say that chick, and I never use that chick to refer to a trans woman, or
yeah.
if let's say a guy's like, oh, a friend of mine's like, oh, I want to meet a girl, but I don't know anyone. If you have any single friends you think might be my type, could you set me up? If I never set him up with a trans woman, if I make these exceptions for trans women, basically, some people will say that's transphobic. Oh, you got to give him a shot.
Yeah, I know, but that's insane.
Yeah, they say that
totally
about gay
insane.
men that
That's
don't want to
insane.
sleep with trans men too.
Yes.
The only reason, and it was a long time, it was a while ago. I'm straight myself, but when I started hearing about this stuff, it was a while ago. It was a few years ago. And the first people who started to complain, make a bother about it, it was lesbians. And it was like all of a sudden they had these guys in their spaces. And it's like if you don't, geez, can I swear? Am I allowed to swear?
Oh yeah.
What? Okay.
It's like put it this way, we do.
Well,
Hell no.
Jeff, right?
This is an unsafe space.
Yeah. So basically, they were being told, if you don't like girl dick, you're a hateful bigot. And the lesbians were like, yeah, but you're a man. You are a man. I don't like men. So that's when I started read some of their articles online, and I'm like, holy crap, these people really want you to believe that they transcended their biological sex. And I couldn't believe it. It just blew me away. And
if that's the case, I'll ask for scientific evidence because biology is testable. But someone's opinion that's testable too, but it's not in the same way. You have to just query it. So.
Those are
But they
two
do say that
colliding myths,
psychology-
competing myths. The
Psychology is kind of like mythical as well. So We don't really
A lot
know
of it
what goes
is.
on in the brain. So
Right. Yeah,
Lady
exactly.
Dick is part of a
Well,
specific mythology, like modern mythology, that's different from the type Joe's talking about when he says, "Do you know any chicks you could set me up with?" It's two different mythological languages that are
wait. What
colliding,
do you mean?
but
Okay,
they're
so
they're
what is
both socially oriented. They're both socially determined.
socially?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. I don't know. Um, maybe the other two gentlemen. Maybe you guys are straight. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm straight. Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. Yeah, thank you for being here. I mean, thank you for having me here. Jeff, blessings. And uh, uh,
Well,
yeah,
I
Oh,
this
mean,
well,
is
YouTube, TML, you're always welcome.
yeah, blessings. Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Helena. It's nice to meet you. And
it's nice
yeah,
to meet you too.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. You have an adorable voice. And
Oh, well,
Sean,
thank you.
yeah, blessings, brother. Yeah, good to talk to you
how
again.
about
Yeah,
She sounds like a woman.
yeah, same.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, blessings. Yeah, and Hank, I mean, good to see you. Yeah, thank you, Joe. Blessings.
And have a good
Yeah,
New Year. If I don't see you for New Year, have a good New Year. Okay.
yeah, all of you too. Yeah. Can you
There's only
still
a
hear
couple of
me?
days left in the year.
Yep, you're here.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, I know. I don't do anything for New Year's. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I do this. We're ringing in the New Year with with a New Year's Eve stream, and then another all-day New Year's stream.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I don't do much. And all my family's out of state, so anyway. I'm just glad nobody's bitching at me for having this handle because sometimes I go into spaces and they just like jump on me and it's
Oh my
like,
God, what
look,
spaces are you going into?
oh, well, I made the unfortunate mistake of of
Conspiratory
going to,
spaces.
huh? What's that?
Conspiratory spaces. That's who's gonna get triggered by that name.
Well, okay, where I usually get it, and it's the funniest thing, it's because I'll listen to James Lindsay, but he keeps bringing up theosophy and Gnosticism,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's like, no, wait. You have to understand, James is a math person. He knows pattern recognition. So I don't even know why he's talking about theosophy now when comparing it to modern day issues, but he does. And so like I'll like go in there and I have this handle and then everybody's like, "Oh my God, she was a horrible, horrible woman." It's like you and I'm like, "Oh, stop. I just have a weird sense of humor, okay?" It's just and I thought she was interesting, so I picked her name. But some people they just jump all over my ass
Wow.
for having
You,
this.
do you think it's because it's is it mostly male spaces? Do you think gender has anything to do
I
with it?
don't know. I'm not really sure. Not really sure. I don't know. I'm
It's good. It's conspiracy spaces. They don't like magicians, so
The conspiracists don't.
they don't because they
That's
think they could.
ironic.
Yeah, they think they control the government and making their lives suck, and it's just their
Oh, they're part
personality.
of the conspiracy. Because she's part of the
Yeah,
occult
she's in on
conspiracy.
it. Yeah,
Just because of a name.
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, I get it. I get it, but it's still stupid. How do they know that I just don't have a weird sense of humor? And I picked her name because I thought it was cool. Okay,
They,
Maybe
that's
your
why I
that,
name
picked
is
her name.
Helena Blavatsky.
Yeah, that's what
I
people
thought
will
it was
do
cool.
if especially if they're like more the conspiracists or the really like anti-establishment fringe parts of one of those communities. If you're not on board with them, they're very likely to have this paranoid response where they think you're in on the problem. You know, you're one of the if you're not one of the puppets, you're one of
Well,
the
That's just
the
tribalist,
sprinkler.
that in-group, out-group
Yeah.
paranoia.
yeah, and I just
I
say,
guess
yeah,
so.
I am in on it. So you better watch your back. You better watch your front. You better watch yourself around me because I am in on it.
Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. I don't say anything threatening or anything. It's just, I mean, come on. I've been in chats where one person called themselves Charlie Chapman, uh,
Oh, I know that guy.
Barack Obama, Abraham Lincoln. I don't know. I just thought everybody got over the fact that sometimes people pick names like that, for fun.
I thought they did too. That's why I'm wondering if
Yeah.
there's other reasons behind it as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess for some people, but I did go through a new age phase, but
It is true that some of those spaces might also be hostile to women. I mean, it's just a thing I've noticed.
maybe I don't.
There's
Yeah,
James
maybe.
Lindsay's Pacific Spaces on YouTube. Does he do panels?
He does he doesn't do live streams. But he does live chats. So he'll, like a premiere.
Oh, when he does his new discourse
Yeah,
topics,
yeah.
he'll have live chatters. Yeah.
Now sometimes the people in there, they're nice, but then I've had some people go, "Why are you named after such an evil, evil woman?" And it's like, wow, okay. I don't-
Wow.
She wasn't that evil. Mostly she was a bullshit artist. That's how I think of her. Okay, she was a very interesting trickster. But I don't think she was evil. But, whatever. I don't know. So, yeah. Yeah.
Well, now that you know you have that kind of power, I would be playing with all kind of names.
Yeah, I hate
Okay,
changing
let's say-
handles though.
Okay, let's say transgenders are mentally ill and gay people are like all the LGBT people are mentally ill. Okay, they accept it. I mean, what's so bad about being mentally ill?
But when
I mean,
you
well,
say
obviously
that, you're speaking mythologically because there's no scientific basis for calling that a mental illness. That's not something
Well,
that
they say that
science has.
they say that
developed.
transgenders are mentally ill.
Right, but by socially oriented
Well,
standards.
transgender folk usually have depression diagnoses as part of their gender dysphoria, right? Like, so it's a bit more than like, oh, I like guys, but otherwise I'm emotionally the same as a straight
There
person.
are trans people that are trans and have no distress over it whatsoever. They're fine. They're like, this is what I am. I'm just gonna live my life.
Yeah.
No, but
Well,
I think the belief that it's a mental illness stems from the fact that they're significantly more likely to have these other, these correlating or these corroborating mental health diagnoses. Like,
Right, but that would be the mental health part, and it's the same types that any other non-trans person could get too. Anxiety, depression, suicidality. That's not unique
yeah, but
to trans people.
it's not unique to them, but it's very much like connected to it at that point, right?
But they have a specific diagnosis of dysphoria that the DSM came up with that's unique to trans people, I guess, or maybe body dysmorphics in general.
Yeah, and I'm not aware of something like that exists for gay people, where there's a form of dysmorphia or dysphoria or just something, yeah. That
Oh,
gay
Right,
people
no,
it
that's
usually
why I think
exists.
that they're two different groups. Like, I don't know why people even
Yeah,
lump them in the same
homosexuality.
category.
Yeah, homosexuality itself used to be classified as a mental illness in DSM 1
Yeah,
and
it
2, I
used to
think.
be.
Hell, it's
But even the
called fucking
DSM
gay.
is not necessarily
It's called,
scientific.
they're called fucking gay because they seem too happy. It's like, it's totally different.
No.
It's like, it's in the fucking word.
Well,
we
no, I
happier
don't
than
understand.
straights? Is
I
that
don't
what-
understand. Yeah, it's like,
Is that
okay,
what tipped y'all off, gave us away?
no, being gay is based on material reality. Okay, so if you're a man, you're a biological man, and you like other men, okay, so you're homosexual. Okay, big wow, that's okay. But it's like, it's different. It's different when you're like, I was born in the wrong body. Oh,
So-
this isn't my body. No, that is your body. That is your body. If you
So-
want to dress up in makeup, I don't give a crap. Okay, I'm from the 80s. I'm a Gen Xer. I do not have any repulsion towards any of that stuff. But it's like, no, biology is material reality, and it's immutable.
Ooh, I got a question. So what if you don't like men but are really horny and just go for a man anyways because they were available? Does it make you gay?
Yeah. Yeah, I
To
think it
me,
does.
gay is the attraction. So, if I slept with a woman, I would still not be straight.
For me, gay is how giddy you get over those McDonald's fries.
That's tomorrow. Y'all gonna
What?
McDonald's
Oh,
fries makes me gay.
well,
I'm just saying, it's like a thing. I don't
But-
expect many straight guys would be all, woohoo, no,
You
I
don't
love me
think
some
over
McDonald's
I
fries.
can't believe that over McDonald's fries. How could they? Donald Trump was. He seemed like
I
he
don't
was
know.
enjoyed himself.
I
French
like
fries
But
are
cheese
Helena
fries
stupid.
makes
more.
a good point because gay, at least the way it was defined in my generation and the way I still define it, is attraction based, which has an empirical biological basis to it. But when people talk about the
Yeah.
concept of a wrong body, that's mythological. That's subjective. There's no scientific um, category or way to determine a wrong body. It's
There's no
wrong
such thing as a wrong
by
body.
some like cultural or human or mythological story based standard, not by
At
anything
that point,
scientific.
like anyone who could complain about their body not being exactly perfect the way they want could say, "Oh, I'm just in the wrong body. Oh, I'm uglier than I'd like to be. I'm in the wrong body." You know, I mean,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
always
I
I've
have
thought
So
about
absolutely.
that about fat people or women that want bigger boobs or like is how is all of that not dysmorphia too?
that's just like I don't know, social pressure. If you see a lot of ads with women with big boobs, you might think you're inadequate if you don't have big boobs.
But
It's
not in
not
the wrong
quite the
body.
same thing. Right, right. Now,
and
let me
I
ask you
would never
this.
say that to a woman.
You would never.
Mr. Accord, I have money dysmorphia. I should have more money.
Me too. I'm trapped in the wrong bank account for sure.
Well, yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you this. Like, okay, you have people and they're anorexic. Okay. So when they look into a mirror, they think they're fat. They think they're fat. Do you book them? Do you allow the like, do you book them to have like, a surgery where they get liposuction? No, you try to convince them that they're fine, and you try the best possible thing is to try to get them to be comfortable in their own body, right? Isn't that sane?
Maybe.
But can you turn
Yeah,
a
I mean,
trans
what can you
person
do about what
with
can
therapy
anorexics change
to
into
not
that
become
would make them?
trans?
I don't know.
Can
You
you use
guys all spoke
therapy
at once.
and psychology to not make someone trans?
Do what?
Can you use
Can
psychology
you use
to?
psychology and therapy to not make someone trans?
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, I know,
I
but
think
some of these are. I don't know. I don't know because I don't know because some of the. I don't know. I've been watching this for a long time, and it's like some of the reasons these kids will say they're trans, they're really stupid reasons. I'm sorry. It's like, oh,
yeah,
I'm a girl. I have short hair. I must be trans. It's like that's stupid. I'm sorry.
But each
yeah.
person
So,
that says it like is going to mean something slightly different. So it just depends on who's saying it,
well, yeah, you can say it's
why they're
relative.
saying it. There's not trans is not unless you're using the strictly medical definition where they're going to have surgery and transition. There's not really a scientific meaning behind it. So you kind of have to
Yeah,
figure out what the person. The same with non-binary and all this other stuff. I have no idea
Okay.
what
but
they're telling me when they say that. I have to get to know each individual person and what they mean by it
I agree
specifically.
with you too, Jeff. This is why I could just never get on board with it, just because I didn't know what people meant. Like,
Yeah.
because I identify as a man, identify as a woman. I'm thinking, what does that even mean? Like, what are you saying? They'll be like, and then they'll say things to me like, well, Joe, you identify as a man, therefore you're cis. Like trying to explain the terms to me, and I'm like, what does it mean? I don't even know what it means if I say I identify as a man. I say
Do you
I know what
feel
it's
like a
like.
man?
I know what it's like to be a man, but to have an identity around it and
You
say
know,
like,
when you do a checkbox on a survey, you hit the man radio button.
Do you
I,
hit the
I
man
mean,
box?
oh, I I fill out almost none of that now. I will just decline to answer almost everything. I don't give them the demographic data anymore. Um, and but like if it's like asking my sex, like if it's a medical form, right? I'll say male because that is what I am, but it doesn't have to do with my identity, right? Like I don't do this like, oh, I identify as this, therefore male. It's just a fact that's been taught to
That's your
me. Like,
privilege.
like how many fingers do I have on each hand? I have 5 on each hand. Did I decide
Yeah,
that based
but
on my identity? No, I looked at my
Yeah, but-
hand.
when you go to the hospital, what difference does your identity, quote unquote, make? Nothing. You
None.
have
But
a prostrate. You have a prostrate, don't you? They
Well,
might
everyone
detect.
does actually. Everyone has a prostate.
No, I don't have one. I don't have one, man.
Women don't have prostates, huh?
I don't have a prostrate,
Yeah,
man.
I'm pretty sure they do. Let me double check.
the women who
You have
steal
to double
prostates
check.
have them. Those gangs of women that
Do you
mug
have
Have a
men
ovaries?
in the
prostate.
streets.
No, I don't have a prostrate. No, I'm a woman because that actually means something. Yeah.
What, Joe? Do you notice a difference from yourself when you're around women? Like, is there something different about yourself that you notice because you're male?
Oh my god.
I mean, most things about me are going to be different because I'm male, I think, at least to some degree, just because it's affected the way my whole body is developed, right? So it's like I'm stronger, like I have bigger shoulders and arms than the women, even the ones that probably work out more than I do. And so I notice things like that.
But
Nice.
psychologically,
Well,
So,
psychologically, women are a lot more afraid to do certain things. I've noticed they're just not as comfortable in certain situations, or just they would hesitate to put themselves in a certain situation that for a guy would not be much of anything. And then I'm much more likely to hesitate to put myself in situations that I think where the physical danger is obvious, but where the social variables are certainly more uncertain and confusing. And I don't think that's as much of an issue for women.
well, I didn't even know about this, Hank.
yeah, that's why I went and double checked. I'm not a freaking medical
The
major, so
Skene's glands.
yeah.
But I think in general, men and women develop habits based on what their sexual advantages are. And by sexual, I just mean the advantages that come with their sex. I don't mean specifically things related to the act of sex itself. And men, on average, are more physically imposing, and so they can fall back on physical solution to things,
I
whereas
guess
women.
I meant psychologically though, as far as like a male identity.
Well, I mean, I'm saying psychological. Those are the psychological things, right? The behaviors, and then when I'm comfortable about things. But I don't reduce these to I identify as a man. I think about this is a good idea, this is a bad idea, and over time, I've noticed that guys are more likely to reach similar conclusions, um, or behave in similar ways than women. And I find some exceptions between the two, but it's the results are clearly slanted between the two sexes.
And even that's just tendencies and probabilities.
Yeah. So, I have a hobby that I said I would discuss much less. And I've noticed it's just you don't find nearly as many women who are interested in that kind of thing. And I don't think that's an accident. I don't think it's the kind of thing that's that's fun for most women.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah, women
But
do makeup and YouTube and what else do they like?
I was playing Minecraft with
Friendship.
my friend, and she was talking about like doing these things so that we could get all these cute little animals on the plot of land I was allotted by the marquee. It's an interesting political structure they have on that server, and it's interesting to me. She's thinking about how to decorate the land with cute little animals and things like that. I'm not thinking about that at all. I'm thinking about how to parcel it up and then make it workable and do all that stuff. So um, we're each just one person, but I think that kind of reflects interesting things about um, you know, masculine and feminine traits. Certainly, I mean, she's also a mother. She has kids. She's used to doing little cutesy things. From her experience as a mother. And I don't have children either, so maybe I would maybe be more inclined to be
Well,
that way if
it'll
I
be
were a
an
father.
interesting time in the future when the world is run by women in the next, and all the men are trans.
Maybe. How
But
much are you
we
joking
won't
there
cut all
versus?
their dicks off. We
Okay.
won't cut all their dicks off to keep the population going. You know what I mean?
Yeah, Vinny, I play Minecraft. Been playing it quite a bit recently.
Hello?
Yeah, you're still here. I can hear you.
Yeah,
Did you have a question? I
okay.
don't know if I heard a question.
Let's be devil's advocate. I'll be devil's advocate. Let's say the liberals are right about the transgender stuff. It's all good. The LGBT population is going up. It's probably going to go up forever, and there will be LGBT. Um, we'll still have a population now. We could still have a population that sustains itself if the LGBT population chooses to. Do you know what I mean?
So you're saying if the LGBT population chooses to reproduce, um, then we could still have a population?
Yeah, in our mythical truth stuff.
Okay. I think they're less likely to reproduce by the nature of being LGBT. But I mean, yeah, if enough of them do it,
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I heard some theories saying that there could be chemicals in the environment that are turning us more feminine, but I could be wrong. Well, it's also maybe reducing our fertility as well. So it's not
I've heard about
only
that
about
too.
social stuff. It's not all about social stuff. I think it's also chemicals.
And changes in our chemistry that affect our behaviors could certainly change the culture.
Yep.
Oh, looks like Helena dropped off and she's trying to come back on, but her connection is trying to make it. Joe, do you play Minecraft?
Yeah, I do. I think you were away when I mentioned an example from Minecraft, but
Is there any gay games or transgender games or what's the
Probably.
political
Well,
system?
they're all becoming
What's the
transgender now. I played those clips from that Dragon Age.
what they do is they take over gaming communities and they like drive out people who don't have their agenda.
Yeah, they do that with a lot of the groups. But I watched a documentary on punk the other day, and in D.C. in 1985, in the hardcore movement, there was this. It was called Revolution Summer, and there was this group that started called Positive Force, and the hardcore movement started to be taken over by kind of this feminist ideology, and it split that community. And so there were like some bands that you were either down with this new way of thinking, and then there were other bands that like, no, we just want to play music. So this tactic has been happening since at least the 80s.
Yeah.
And it
Like
started with women feeling like they weren't as accepted in the scene as the guys were, and they were trying to carve out a space for them. And then the Riot Girls came along a few years later, and that started third wave feminism. So what looks like something new to me, because I'm seeing it on social media and I'm seeing it in my own groups, is not really new when I look at the history of even my own culture. Helena, thanks for coming up today. It was cool chatting. I hope you
mhm.
get to come back again.
And I heard that there's more violence in lesbian marriages than in gay couples. Heard that somewhere on Facebook. Could be fake news though.
That's
That there's
interesting.
more violence in
Let me
lesbian
see.
couples than in.
I bet women hit their husbands all the time and the men just don't complain
They
about
don't
it.
report it.
Yeah.
Let me try to find some stats.
But yeah, all that myth and truth stuff is quite confusing. It's quite hard to find the
Well,
truth
we'll
in
clear it
the.
up. That's just the prelude to a deeper dive I'm going to take. Wait, what? Bad? Oh, Lord, you got into a fight in Mexico? I would be scared. I'm scared to even go to Mexico because I'd probably get in one too.
Mexico has become such a crazy place now too.
Have you been?
No, but it's like it's taken over by the cartels. I mean, that
Yeah,
wasn't
even like South America in general, not even just Mexico.
it wasn't always like that, right? It used to be something of a normal country.
I think you always had like the gang, the cocaine lords and all that. I think it's at a scale now that they say a lot of those cartels are the size of countries, state, like they operate like their own state and
The
government. They're so
cartels
large.
are effectively doing what ISIS did at this point. I mean, I'm surprised we tolerate the
We need to
cartels.
learn from them. They're growing their numbers at least.
So that's because they like move into your neighborhood and they tell like the 14, 15-year-old boys, you're part of the cartel now, and if you say no, we'll kill all your little brothers and sisters.
So they're thugs. They're just doing
Yes,
violence. Like
and they basically do what ISIS
the same
does.
way the barbarians conquered Rome.
Yeah, they do what ISIS does. ISIS goes into an area, they take it over, and they say, join us or we'll kill all of you. And then people join them, and that's how they grow.
Well, no one's trying to stop them. Does the Mexican government
There's too
not
much
have a
corruption in the Mexican
motivation to
government.
stop them?
There's too much corruption in the Mexican government. So most of the law enforcement officials are bought out or themselves under threat. A lot of bribery. So the only way it would change is if the United States wanted to intervene and recognize it as a security threat that, that's how things are just across the southern border. And to this day, that's not been the response. So I guess we'll see how long that continues.
So
I mean, it's
that's like the real conspiracy, that the Mexican government is actually not really running things, but there's this group of thugs behind it that's
They're
controlling everything. That's more of a
well,
conspiracy than here in the U.S.
it's more that they're basically left to do anything that the cartels don't want to do, because it becomes harder for the cartels to do what they do if they're actually the state. So unlike ISIS, they don't actually aspire to be a state, but at least officially. But they effectively have the reins of much of the state, and obviously they don't want to have to worry about international treaties and stuff like that.
So why don't we consider them a national security threat?
Well, that's a good question. That's essentially saying because I imagine a big part of the migrant issue that's occurring in the country right now has to do with the fact that the cartels are scaring people out of their countries. And so, if they're coming to America, you would think, well, isn't the root cause of all this, at least to a point, the fact that the cartels are such a problem in places like Mexico?
Yeah, but the root cause is demand. So if you just legalize all the drugs, maybe not heroin, but maybe cocaine, you legalize cocaine, what do you think?
Well, Oregon tried that and for like 8 years, and they had to reverse it. It didn't work out. They decriminalized
legalize
all their
cocaine?
drugs.
Really?
I'm looking at this is from 2009. It's from the Department of Justice. The rise of Mexican drug cartels and U.S. national security. It was a hearing they had on it. So, and I'm seeing articles from University of Michigan saying that declaring them as terrorists could help. CBS News has an article on designating them as terrorism. So it's in the conversation, and they've done hearings on it. I don't know why it hasn't happened.
Well, I think there's a mixture of reasons, because it's not like there's how with most issues there's a prepared argument for or against it once it gets left or right coded. And you talk to people online, and then they'll kind of immediately go into those default arguments with you, even if that's not your opinion. And I don't think that's one issue where I don't think there's really one yet, because people don't know how to feel. But I imagine there's a mixture of motives here. One is that to deal with the cartels, the U.S. would have to take military action, which is that say they'd have to send troops into Mexico. So there's the issue of, do we get the permission of the Mexican government? If they say no, does America invade Mexico? And then how severe is it? And of course, for this to be especially effective, you would need a suddenness to the attack. You would essentially need a blitz style attack to hit a lot of key targets.
You could use it in America. You could use the American military against drugs in America. Why don't you use that instead?
Well, because the cartels are more organized targets. Like if we're talking about them having very close to state-like resources and power, then they have targets that you can hit. Whereas drugs in America, it's like some dude on your corner. You're not going to send a tank brigade after the dude on your corner. And
haven't they determined that the war on drugs has not worked?
So the police in crackdown on drugs, people don't feel like it's worked. I don't know what the reasons might be
I
that
still
it's
don't know
failed,
how
but
hard it is to go after drug dealers. Like, just
well, you know what
arrest them
they
and
okay.
lock them up. It seems simple. Why is that hard?
So you know what they did in the Philippines under Duterte, who got elected in like 2016?
No,
They did
capital
an
punishment.
they did an actual war on drugs. So the police just started shooting drug dealers on the streets. They just were just taking them up and just killing them, and they killed thousands of drug
Did
criminals
it
or
stop them?
suspected drug. Yes, yes. The Philippines got vastly improved. If you talk to Filipinos, they'll say it's finally safe to go outside again. They are happy with the result, but he basically violated a lot of what you would consider to be norms of democracy, right? Like rights of individuals to trials and things like that.
And I'm not saying go shoot the drug dealers, but can we at least arrest them and shut down their operation?
I mean, that could probably be done more. I mean, obviously, there's less law enforcement in certain areas where Democrats have control because they feel like enforcing the law as written is racist. That's the meme that drives their behavior now. So I
So are
imagine
they
there's things that
assuming it's the drug dealers are all
yeah.
racially?
I mean, there's
It's
still even in areas controlled by Republicans, there are still drug networks that are thriving that they're trying to deal with. Um, so I haven't seen like a
Well,
breakdown
I don't
between
I
like
understand
think the
this
reason why
trying to
people
deal
want to
with.
solve
I
it,
guess that's what's confusing me. This trying to deal with. It seems pretty clear how you deal with crime. You
yeah,
I
impose
mean,
but
they could
the
easily
legal
solve
consequences
the
on it.
drug crime. They could easily solve it in America. They just don't want to because they make too much money from it. I'd say the police makes too much money from the police the war on drugs. So if they solved it like really hard, like El Salvador or something, then they'll have nothing else to do. You know?
Is it like the homeless problem here in Seattle? They're not incentivized to solve it because their whole
well, again,
industry would go away.
I think the policing is going to follow what the voters want. So if you go back to the issue with Mexico, right? One, how many people want to create an international incident with Mexico by invading it, even if it deals with a very real drug problem that can't be ignored? A lot of people are nervous about that. How many people want to get stuck into another war like Iraq? Which who knows? Maybe Mexico could
Well,
end
how
up
many
being.
people want the status quo to continue like it is? And why is war the only solution? Like, surely there's other things we can do.
Well, if we're going to go into Mexico, like if America sends its military to Mexico, I mean, what else is it going to do except send its military?
Are there things we can do here at home before we
No, they should just bring loads of therapists and psychologists, like an army of
send some
therapists and
social workers?
psychologists.
Well, the only thing
Yeah.
I could think to do is in America is if guns became heavily more restricted, because a big part of what makes the cartels powerful is most of their guns come from the U.S. because they're easily available here. So they have an easy access to weaponry that they can use to control the country. So if they suddenly didn't have as much access to that, I mean, they would still have the weapons they have now for some time, but um, if that could be reduced to the point that they can't rely on it anymore, maybe it would be difficult for
Well, do
them
you think Trump
to.
is going to solve this problem? Do you think Trump's going to try and solve it and probably fail?
I think Trump's going to try and deport people, and that's as much as he'll think about the immigration issue. I don't think, as far as what happens in Mexico, he has any plans for that.
Who's what? It depends on who he appoints. What department's responsible for drugs? That Department of Justice.
I would think, yeah.
Who's his DOJ guy? Let's see.
I don't remember. Yeah, I think Trump is going to be more concerned about stopping the current inflow of illegal immigrants and then sending as many back as possible, and maybe also tightening what is considered legal immigration and limiting it to just the people who will be, bringing value to the country. That would be my guess
Pam
about how he's
Bondi,
going.
Attorney General, is at the head of the DOJ. It's
Yeah, the
that
Attorney
Pam
General.
Bondi lady.
Yeah, the only like cabinet head that isn't called
Maybe she'll be
Secretary
a
of
Karen.
the only cabinet head that isn't called like a Secretary of something would be the Attorney General. So they're not the Secretary of Justice; they're the Attorney General.
He's gonna get an ultra Karen in there to take care of it.
Maybe. I don't know what his
Is that
picks are like.
good, Karen? Is that a good thing? Being a Karen
I don't think they are, but
for
if she
drugs?
does, we'll see how effective she is. As long as she doesn't turn it on me.
I mean, I guess we should legalize weed and everything else. All the ones. Well, magic mushrooms and shrooms, we should not make
Well,
illegal.
yeah, but magic mushrooms is not even the cartel issue. I don't even care if magic mushrooms are legal or not.
So what are the bad ones? Heroin, fentanyl,
Well, cocaine and now fentanyl and that zombie drug, the xylazine.
Yeah. So the cops should stop playing their games in their phone and eating donuts and just go hardcore on it for 4 years and then take a break for another 4 years.
Why take a break? Like I don't understand if you know somebody in your town is dealing drugs, why they get to just continue to deal drugs. Why don't they go get arrested?
It depends on the DA and what their priorities are.
So some parts of the U.S. just they're okay with drugs happening. I don't understand that.
I mean, it's all resources. There's a limited budget, limited personnel, limited hours
Why
on
would
the
you
clock.
not prioritize something like drug dealing?
Well, because if the war on drugs is racist, then you know.
How
you
is it
don't-
racist? I'm sure there's white people dealing drugs too.
Yeah,
No,
but
we should arrest the users, not the sellers. The people who use it, which are the rich white boys, we should arrest them all as well. That'll
I
stop the
think you
drug
go at
trade.
the you go at the source. Like you shut down the market.
it's a tricky thing because, in theory, drug use is a victimless crime, but yet it nevertheless has a lot of violence and destabilization associated with it. And I think part of the issue is people don't know how to solve a problem like that. Like gay
Well, they
marriage,
should
for
come here.
example.
We do problem solving here. We can help them.
Yeah, but like gay marriage, for example, ultimately won out because people looked at it and said it's victimless. Why are people against it like it's this immoral thing? Nobody gets hurt by it. And with drugs, like an individual case of drug use, so like if you're sitting alone in your house and you use drugs, you don't hurt anybody. But long-term drug users often become dangerous and violent. The drug dealers themselves often are violent to enforce their turf because they cannot enforce their business relationships by, going to like small claims court and being like, "Hey, he owes me $500 for this sale," because what they're doing is illegal. So they have to use violence to, enforce what they do. And so it's a tricky thing where, um, people don't know how to feel about an issue like that.
Okay, well, instead of spending loads of money on cops, and why don't we spend loads of money on therapy and like education and stuff like that? Would that work, or probably not?
It has not
because-
so far. It's-
No, because here's what people do, especially young people who are the ones we'd be teaching this stuff to. They'll be like, "Oh, they told me that drugs are bad. Fuck them. I'm going to do drugs anyway. They don't tell me what to do." That's what they fucking do.
They did that even growing up. They would have the like this is your brain on drugs. They would have all kind of commercials to try to. In fact, when I was in junior high school, in one of our classes, we had to make a movie, and it was a PSA about don't do drugs. And we had to write the script and act in it. And one of the guys jumped out of the window of the school, pretended to be on drugs, and like
Oh, nice.
and we did all of that. And even doing a PSA on it didn't stop us from doing drugs.
Yeah,
Like
because
even
they don't
creating our
care.
own PSA was not enough to stop us.
Because the act of doing drugs then just becomes a form of rebellion, and some people like to rebel.
I did it out of boredom more than anything else.
Well, I heard that the millennial and the Gen X, the younger generations, are drinking alcohol less in general. The population, they're drinking less alcohol.
I wonder if
But
it's
they're
because
mainly
they're
replacing-
smoking weed now.
Yeah,
'Cause weed is
millennials-
more.
Millennials and Gen Z, I've heard, do less drugs, drink less alcohol, and have less sex.
That's great.
Like pretty
I
much
wonder
all
why there's
devices.
social anxiety.
Pretty
Well,
much
now
all
if we could
devices
get
are
them to
lower.
do less fentanyl.
I think fentanyl is sort of taking the void of certain drugs, but it is true that drug use seems to be going down. But it doesn't. It's not clear that it's because of PSAs. It seems to be based on something that's generally been affecting millennials and Gen Z more.
You think it's weed?
No, I don't think it's weed. Like why would alcohol consumption be going down, for
Well,
example?
I quit doing alcohol and I started smoking weed. I lost my taste for alcohol completely. In fact, I haven't really drank since.
Yeah, so it's not like there's as much PSAs against alcohol because that's a legal substance, and most adults don't even like saying bad things about alcohol because they drink, and then they look like a fucking idiot if they say, "Here's why you shouldn't drink, kids."
I don't know. I would love to talk to young people and find out why they're not doing the drugs they do,
I
or
think
not
some of the
doing the
issue
ones
is
they
here
don't do.
too is that people often do this stuff impulsively. If we're like, "Oh, what's the reason they don't?" There is no fucking reason. People are not obligated to make sense to us with anything they do.
I know, but I don't understand why they would impulsively do something that destroys their entire life, like fentanyl.
It's just, these things don't. I think it's more the intelligence gap you were saying. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's something similar to that. If intelligent gap
People
is the
are
wrong
that
thing.
dumb to know not to do. That's like not jumping out in front of traffic, not touching the
Well, no,
hot
fentanyl.
stove.
It's added to other drugs. It's not the choice to take fentanyl. It's added to the cocaine or to the heroin or weed. I'm not sure.
Well, it
But
then
I don't think
don't
they
do the
add.
cocaine and the heroin.
Well, that's one reason actually people should stop taking drugs because maybe they're adding it to the cocaine and weed more. So that'll
Yeah,
make people
there's no
less want to.
FDA there's no FDA warning label on the cocaine to let you know what they put in it.
But
Right.
some of it you have to inject, and I know cocaine is not. People don't inject cocaine, so it's the kind that you have to heat up in a spoon and like on Train Spotting, which I think was meth at the time. It was just plain meth.
Yeah, I mean, but not it doesn't make sense because it's not supposed to make sense. They're not
I
making
guess
sense.
not.
If you ask them why did you do this, they couldn't fucking tell you, and they often say, "I don't know."
I
Like,
had a
I would,
friend that did meth, and he would come to my house and just like sit on the floor and listen to music and space out. It didn't really look like a drug that did anything. I don't know why people would go out of their way to do something like meth.
I mean, I don't get any. I never understood why people drink alcohol so much. I've always looked at alcohol consumption and just thought that doesn't look very fun to me. In fact, if anything, that looks like it would be more of a problem.
So people's lives get really bad, and that's why they turn to drugs.
Yeah, I
There's
think it's just people are trying to hide themselves from their feelings. Like,
there's other options. Well, see,
yeah,
you should
but
feel. That's yes. Feel your feelings. Don't try to hide your feelings.
well,
Let them out.
the
That's the
long term,
healthy way.
the real solution to these issues with people's lives and their feelings are usually long term in nature, and people don't want long term solutions. They want instant solutions.
Yeah.
And the drug feels like an instant solution at the very least, so that's what they do. And then its addictive nature means that they get locked into it,
Yeah. Like
assuming it's an
McDonald's
addictive
fries.
Same thing
substance.
with climate change.
Yeah.
We want short-term gratification. We don't think about the long-term. Same with climate change. The whole human race is addicted to fossil fuels. We're addicted to everything, man.
Here it comes.
Well, Patty, Fatty, they should tell their kids to do drugs then. I think churches should tell that kids rebel against whatever the church tells them to do. So the preacher should start pushing
Yeah.
drugs.
But like this is why I think like in general, if the solution is long term in nature and it requires you to be a bit patient and disciplined, it's just not going to stick as well. And then the same people who refuse the patient long term solution will complain that the system is rigged later when their life isn't good because they just didn't want to go along with what was laid
Again,
out in front
people
of them.
making choices, choices,
Yeah.
choices, choices.
And this is why I'm not active in politics and stuff anymore because I began to realize that the more you try to be involved when with good intentions of having people's back, being on their side, trying to help them, the more they see it as, you trying to tell them what to do or something like that. And, you just become another thing against which they can rebel. And so, eventually I realized, just got to let things happen. I might have to let the entire country burn down, and that'll be okay.
It did 5 years ago.
I
I
mean,
would
four
like to
years ago,
avoid another round of that if I can.
I guess it's almost 5 now. Yeah. Well, okay, the whole thing did not burn down. I'm talking about like imagine 10 times worse than the George Floyd riots. Okay.
Man, I'm the nihilist and the Satanist, and I'm not even advocating for letting the country burn as a solution. I want to do
I'm not.
everything I can
I,
Wait,
to
I'm
not
not
get to that
advocating.
point.
I'm not advocating for letting it burn as a solution. That's not what I'm saying. I'm simply saying that I know that I have to be okay with that.
Yeah, I'm not okay with it until I've tried everything I can to keep it
I'm
from
not
happening.
saying everyone else should go out and do that, but um, for my part, I just know that if from what I have done, that's the sort of response that I get is that people just resist, and a situation becomes more unsolvable. So I just have to let things go, and I have to be, willing to accept disaster if it means people are making their free choices.
I mean, if people do decide to just start burning everything down, there's not much I'm going to be able to do with it. But
Mhm.
as long as I have a voice and a platform, I'm going to try to give them other options or alternatives, I guess.
wait, is that like anarchist stoic philosophy or something? Anarchy.
Some, yeah. I know in the punk scene back in the day, anarchy was a big, one of the big strains that drove that.
Who are you asking, Sean?
Both of you.
I think it was just a general
You,
question.
you kind of
Okay.
sound like a stoic, Joe. Is that a
You
philosophy
cl-
of
you
stoicism?
clocked him good.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right there. That's essentially my thought process there. And so, I look at life as trying to figure out what my social duty is and then doing it and doing it without complaint. And, it can be tough because you're not given a clear answer of what that is. And then that's frustrating. And then you're inclined to complain when you're frustrated. But, um, we each have our own social duty. Clearly mine is to sit aside and just let people do what they're going to do and not interfere with them and not do things that get in their way or obstruct them.
I've seen you care on a more than one, more than a couple of times.
So I certainly have my own opinions about things, but I understand that like those do not have a place. Those are just for me, and they're not for me to vote on or to legislate or advocate or picket or anything like that. So I can definitely think things. I look and I see things and I make judgments in real time everywhere I go. That painting's nice. That one isn't. Right. This is just part of the human experience. But as far as what I'm going to do about it, that's very different. And I know more about what my social duty is now than I did, let's say, in the past when I was more interested in being politically active.
And going back to the topic from earlier today, I would say that science can't provide the answers to any of that. Um, it relies on your personal mythology, your personal mythological truth.
Yes, I mean science can only answer really dry factual questions, and then it's what you do with those conclusions that is up to you.
And you can still be reasonable about it and think through ethical problems logically, but you're doing it on something that's not scientific. You're applying reason to a non-scientific category when you do that.
It's definitely something that would be difficult to um, put into a standard scientific process. Um, you could argue that maybe there are some value systems that are more regimented than others, but even the most regimented among them, I think, would be difficult to compare to the scientific process.
Yeah, because values are not A, they're not empirical and observable, and B, you can't test and falsify them.
I'll agree that there are certainly things about Stoic philosophy that on the surface sound scientific, like when you talk about living in accord with nature. If you're talking about science is about trying to figure out how the natural world works, right? So, uh, but even then, it's reaching value judgments.
Yeah, so the figuring out part might be so you can use science to help you figure out what that nature is, but the the willing to live with it would be the mythological part.
Yeah, it's a sense that's the axiom there. It's that if you have problems in life, if you're unhappy, it's because you're not living in accord with nature. And so, you know, ask yourself, what did I do that got me out of accord?
Does living in accord with nature make you happy,
Yeah, compared to the
or it
past,
just makes you not suffer?
but it alleviates suffering. It's a mixture of alleviating suffering and making things happier. There are certainly, I don't have a blissful existence, certainly, but and there's I bet there are things that could change to make that possible, but um, there's a lot of stress, like in misery, I've eliminated from my life by focusing more on living in accord with nature rather than just um, reaching for anything and everything I want, regardless of whether or not it makes sense.
Well, I don't understand why people say living against. We're always living according to nature. We're just doing it badly or right, well or not well. I think all this stuff about living natural or fossil fuels are natural. Everything we're doing now is natural. It's part of the universe, whatever natural laws.
What about like a
But I
gay
guess it's
person
either we're
that
doing it badly.
pretends to be straight and marries and has a family and all that to try to fit in with heterosexual society?
So,
Say that again. I didn't hear you. The beginning.
what about when a gay person tries to be straight or fit in with heterosexual
Yeah, I
society?
wouldn't say they're living naturally or living with their nature. I'd say they're
Well,
trying to go against it.
I'll talk about that, Jeff, and then but I want to address what Sean said first about fossil
But it was
fuels.
kind of too Sean, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, well, okay. So Sean, like with the fossil fuel thing, I would say, yeah, I mean, technically everything's natural. So anything we do is natural. If I punch you in the face, that happened in nature, the natural world. And if I don't punch you in the face, my abstention also happened in the natural world. Well, I think where the Stoics look at it is people often make decisions and perform actions with conclusions that are not in alignment with the natural world. And when the results surprise them, that's the misalignment. And so you could say humanity has been burning fossil fuels, which are natural, and um, but they've been doing so in a way that they're just, effectively a limitless resources that don't have consequences, when in fact they do. And so, the part where people say, "Oh, our environment is fucked up now, and there's microplastics in our balls," Jesus Christ, why did this happen? Right? That's where the out of alignment with nature is. Like, so if they were okay with that, if they knew that going in when we started burning fossil fuels, which obviously we didn't, that would be one thing. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, we knew that was coming. We decided it was worth it. That would be one thing. But that's not what's happening, right? So that's where the misalignment is. And now to what Jeff said, I would say it kind of depends. Uh, in modern society, like, and that's probably the only useful example going forward. I would agree. If you're not gay, but then, in older eras, if you were, let's say, the son of a powerful man, and you had like marriage alliances, your most the best option to live in accord might have been to marry the woman he assigned you to and just deal with it,
But
because
but
the fallout.
and possibly, but I would not call that living in accord with one's nature.
Well, there's lots of natures at once, right? Like nature is several phenomena at once. It's not just you, the individual. Um, and so I think a lot of people, like, if you're the only heir to the throne and you're gay, it's going to be bad for your country if you don't marry somebody of similar rank and then have a legitimate heir, and um, you know because otherwise you could destabilize the country, and then that could lead to, lots of deaths and such, right? These are actual problems that happened throughout history that people were worried
So
about.
then, when people talk about living in a car with one's nature, which nature are they talking about? If there's more than one, and the word nature is being used for all of these different things, how do you know which one to live in accord with?
That's the question you have to ask yourself. Everyone's born in a different slice of time, right? So Marcus Aurelius, he took on the duty of being emperor because he saw it as his social duty to do so. He lived in an empire. He did not live in a democracy. He knew the imperial history of Rome. He knew what happened when tyrants ruled it or when weak people ruled it. And he knew that he had to do it well, and that if he passed it on to someone else, he would risk calamity. Which ultimately happened when his son Commodus took over. But for at least a period of about 20 years, it was not like that. And that was the question as he thought about it. And there were things he personally wanted that he put up with. So it's not a one size fits all thing, right? I'm imagining circumstances in which a gay person could actually marry a woman, and it's living in accord with nature for them, right? But I'm just assuming that those
But
are
then
the
you're
things that
using
would
the
make the
term
leap.
nature for everything, just to cover everything. You're using it to
Uh,
cover socialization, social values, and I see nature as something individual. It's something personal to the individual. It's their nature, their biology, their who
Well,
they
yeah,
are as
but
a person.
the Stoics saw, when they say nature, they saw it as like the whole, right? It's the totality of everything in which we live, right?
But
So
then when the whole conflicts, calling it all nature seems to not help clarify the problem.
so
Like
there
even at least in Dabrowski's theory, he has the first factor, the second factor, which is one's nature, one's nurture. So he's not calling it all nature. He's saying you have nature making demands on you, you have your socialization making demands on you, and you have to choose between the two in different circumstances. If the Stoics are saying you have nature making demands on you, and everything that's making a demand can be called nature, it doesn't kind of help you separate the influences so that you can see them clearly and choose between them.
No, immediately, like when a problem is flashing in front of your face. No, it's not clear. It's not it's a philosophy based on asking the right questions, right? And so you have to ask yourself, how do I feel about this? How did this go? Right? It's a meditative process. So there's never going to be an immediate obvious answer, and a lot of things seem conflicting at first, and you gradually resolve them over time. And different people will reach different answers based on
So
how.
I don't disagree with any of that as a
Mhm.
practice. My confusion comes with calling it living in accord with one's nature. The phrase is misleading. It doesn't communicate precisely what you just
So
described.
I'm
It,
not
it
saying
connotes
one's
something
nature.
else in my head.
I'm not simply saying one's nature. I'm saying with nature, right? There is some grand natural whole in which you are a part, and you have to figure out like what is that fit. So when it's talking about how you fit into the whole, it's not just talking about what is natural to you, like specifically. Like, do you like um, peanut butter or not? But also, like, how do you fit into it in the time and place in which you exist? Right. So if Marcus Aurelius were born today, he could not be emperor, right? So he would have to figure out a different social duty, even if everything else about him was basically the same. And these are the things that are different. I might have done much better in a different time and place than where I was born. Right? These things can always um, vary if you switch some variables around.
Well,
And
the
he
way
wrote
they
in
say,
Latin anyway, right? So this is just
He wrote
translations anyway.
he wrote in Greek, but
Oh.
yeah, because the
the
Roman.
way they say,
Mhm.
sorry, the way they say morals are subjective, and the way they say there's only one truth. I'm kind of confused on that. I'm like, okay, so there's only one truth using the scientific method or myths, but more they say the morals are subjective, so you can have the and you can do things two ways, and they could both be right or something. I'm confused. Well, I could be wrong here, but let's say if they are subjective, that means that if I choose right, that thing and that works, and I do something else and that works morally, then is there obviously there's only one truth. I'm confused. Sorry, I should stop. All right.
It sounds kind of like you're telling me that it's the issue of modeling, and how when we propose an answer to a question, right? This is something that's discussed in the scientific process. Is we produce a model for it. It's some sort of description, often some kind of analogy of how the thing works, and then we use it as the baseline assumption for whatever the underlying problem is going forward, and it can work for us. And then we can produce an alternate model that says, like, well, I think what's really going on is this, and both of them can produce useful results with no clear advantage over the other. Um, so like Newtonian physics is a model, general relativity is a model, and then quantum mechanics is a model. They each describe physics in different ways. Um, Newtonian physics ultimately was too simple, and so whatever it covered was carved up by relativity and quantum mechanics, and those are the two fields now, and they each do things. Their models look at the universe very differently from each other, but they each do things that are useful and predictive and better than the others in some ways, but worse than the others in some ways. And so it's sort of a thing where you have like these two truths, right? Quantum mechanics is probabilistic. According to quantum mechanics, the particles that make us up are popping in and out of existence all the time, and the exact place in space they occupy is uncertain. And so it's like you almost might think of it as like one of those, like if you ever see those like really sparkly lights that has like a bunch of little lights all around, they come on, they flicker on and off a lot. You might think of like we're just basically that at the level of particles. And then of course, even with quantum mechanics, there's weird dualities. They'll say things are particles and waves in a system. And then you ask, well, what are we, a particle or a wave? And both of these models for how to look at the things that make us up work. So that's just how it is. There's some things about reality that are still sufficiently mysterious that even if there is one truth to it, we don't know what it is, and so we have two, sometimes more models that attempt to explain it.
Right. So I don't really get the subjectivity of morals. It's like if there's only one truth, then can only be one correct moral opinion. Is that right?
Well,
But
I
there's
think
not only one truth.
I think what it comes down to is the fact that a lot of people still don't know what they really mean when they talk about morality. And if you go back to Aristotle, he basically says morality is talking about human flourishing. He looks at everything anyone's had to say on morality, and he basically said, whenever we talk about morality, it seems to me we're talking about human flourishing. So I'm just going to work with that from now on. A lot of philosophy about morality has been based on it from there. I would say theologians disagree, specifically because they're theologians and they see morality as essentially something imparted by God. And whatever it is, I don't think they really define it, but basically it's the creator tells us what it is. And so some of it has to do with that. I think another thing too is, even if we talk about human flourishing and we settle on that, it's a very broad, abstract thing. And so what is human flourishing, right? And then we go back to like the gay example. Um, is human flourishing when a gay person can marry who they want? Is human flourishing when a gay medieval prince marries a woman so that he can produce an heir to keep his country stable? Is that human flourishing? Right? And then you might say, well, which truth is the truth there? Because there's a case to be made for both.
Right. This is deep now. That's cool. Yeah. Learning stuff here.
Most philosophers say that, not less.
All right.
I don't
And so,
know, Sean. I don't know where you're getting that there's one truth from, and I don't know. And if you mean scientific truth, I don't know how that applies to morality. I don't know what that can tell us about morality. Like, what can quantum physics tell us about how we should behave and act toward each other? Hey, Puffy.
Oh yeah, you're right. Well, I don't know. Like, I guess you could use a scientific method to find the most morally good way to do things.
But how would you set up that experiment? What are you even studying? What are you even looking at to do that? It's not anything you can. It's not anything empirical or quantifiable. Y- y- Like like taking the gay example, how would science tell you what a gay person should do? If they should pretend to be straight and marry and have a kid, or if they should live out their natural gay life? What would you study and what experiment would you set up to come up with the final correct solution to that? It has to be socially and individually determined. I don't know what science can contribute to that.
Well, obviously, psychology and physio, socio philosophy, and all use a scientific method to make their or social studies. They use studies to make their theories correct, be proven correct.
Um, they use scientism. It's not the same. They don't use it in the same way you would use it if you were studying an atom. Like the way we study physical science and even chemistry and biology doesn't transfer to our study of the mind and our study of other people and the interactions between them. You lose some kind of concrete, observable empiricism in the process.
I don't
So
understand what that
it's
means.
all inference and speculation, and it's not going to give you the same answers that a physics equation will give you.
Yeah, like they can't use the scientific method to make. Well, they could have a political party run by scientists, and they use the scientific method to do
To
all
do
their
what?
policies correct, like using science and all that, which they
That
do.
sounds like
Sometimes
science
they do.
fiction. To do how would you do that? Like, give me an example of that in action.
Well, every moral decision, every decision you take, you do a scientific study to see if it's good or right or something. Fuck.
I know, but I
This
don't,
is
like
all.
just like with the gay
This
example
is
or
all
any
my
other example.
mythology here, right? This is all my myths.
The what?
This is all my mythology. Like,
I think so. Yeah, I don't
stuff.
know how you would use science to come up with a correct moral decision. Like, I don't even know how you would use math to do it. A lot of science involves observation and quantification. So, what would you even be observing to determine what the correct moral decision is?
Well, you do a scientific experiment. Is killing someone good or bad? We'll do a study about that.
How
Okay,
would
let's
you
kill that
what?
guy.
What's your metric for good or bad?
Well, obviously you can do an experiment to see if something's good or bad.
I
Okay,
mean, you
let's
could
see.
kill people, but how would you could like kill people as a test, as an experiment, but then what would you be measuring to determine the degree of goodness or badness of that killing?
Man,
Like
I'm going out of my
forget
league here.
quantification for a moment. What observable phenomena would you even be looking at to determine?
Yeah, I really think it's just something you have to figure out what you think morality means and then just commit to that. And then any scientific studies you do that you want to assist in your your moral decision making, it would have to be on matter of fact questions that affect essentially what kind of conclusion you reach. So a good example is we don't burn people for witchcraft anymore because we know that they don't cause like the diseases we have and things like that. So burning them for something they did not cause makes absolutely no sense and would therefore be immoral. And in fact, every time it was done was immoral.
If
Well,
that's
how do
why
you
we
know
were
that was
burning them.
immoral? I could just say it's not immoral, and how could you disprove me? Let's say
I
I'm
didn't.
devil's advocate here, and I say
I
killing all the immoral things are correct. How would you say that that's not right?
well, you'd have to. You would. I'd have to know how you're determining immoral. That's not a scientific category.
So
First, you'd
morals is
have to have
separate
some
from.
standard of the moral to measure immoral against. And I don't know what are you talking about, like birth defects, like people that are born with certain genetic anomalies relative to the
So I
norm would be considered immoral?
yeah, I'm just saying that like morals could be subject. I'm just saying that like in an alien civilization, there could be aliens that think that all the bad things are good and all the good things are bad. I don't know.
Right. They're Mr. B, that's what the debate is. I don't think there is. Or put it this way, I don't think science can tell us can answer moral questions. If you mean that there's scientific ethic, like science should be used ethically, that people practicing science should practice it in an ethical way, if that's what you mean by a place for morality. But if you mean that morality as a subject of scientific inquiry, I don't know what would science be studying. What's the observable phenomenon that science would study? Because morality is usually an act. It's an act that another human takes. So science could observe
Yes.
the act, but what would the moral quality or substance of the act be that they're studying? They could make statements about the act itself, but they couldn't make moral statements using science.
So yeah, Jeff, to what you said, I think this is useful just to point out to show how the thought about morality has evolved over time. Um, the word moral comes from Latin, um, and it comes from a noun. The singular form of it was mos, M-O-S, and then the plural form is mores, and then you take mores, you turn it into an adjective, you get morales or moral. So mos, the singular version, is a custom or a habit. So if you pluralize it, you get customs or habits. The plural version was often used to refer basically to culture, though. So they would use it as to mean that. And they were going with this word because a lot of Western philosophy starts with the Greeks and the Romans. So when they would write about it, right, they would talk about morality, and they would use that word for a reason because they realized they were talking about the habits of the society, the culture of the society, the things that we do, and thinking about how good or bad they are. And so it is necessarily based on actions that are taken, and an assessment of why they're done and what value they have. And so if you get to Aristotle, right, you go back to human flourishing, it's what actions do we take that help or hurt human flourishing, whether it's at the individual level or at the collective. And that's both in terms of whether it's an individual or collective performing actions, or an individual or collective bearing the consequences
But
of
that's
those
just one
actions.
standard of morality, and you'd still have to define that. And I don't know that how science would help.
Yeah. And that's why I said it may be helpful to sort of look at how the thought process has been. I didn't
Yeah,
say
Mr. B, to me, this is ethic. This is like the how should science be used, but science itself can't tell us how to use it. That's something that we have to determine socially as humans. And that's going to depend on the mythology that we're working off of, that we've internalized from the culture we live in, whatever one that is. There's going to be some cultures that are going to have different ways of looking at it because they have a different story about themselves in the world than other cultures.
it's interesting what Mr. B said. Because it's like when you think about what Tesla's doing with the Optimus robots. I mean, that's effectively what they're doing is they're making um, these fairly human-like slaves that can do pretty much anything we tell them to once the technology's there.
Is it that's what computers do, huh?
To a point, but with the optimist, like the optimist thing is those are like the very human shaped robots that are going to move and walk like humans and basically be your like robot butler. And essentially, it's similar to just modifying humans genetically so that they're born to be as obedient as robots.
I don't think it's only similar because you're making it similar in your mind, but it's not similar in practice. Nothing like humans. Creating a robot is nothing like a human being born.
Well, it depends on how much you modify the human that it's different enough that you're not bothered by the morals of it. So it would depend. Like, are they slaves, but they also suffer for being slaves? You know, what if they don't care about it? Like, when you tell your computer to do something and it doesn't care. It doesn't feel burdened by it.
Yeah, and I don't care
You know,
either. I don't care about Alexa or any of those. I don't care
so
about
if
AI.
if
They're
humans were
tools.
genetically modified to be obedient and they did not possess the ability to suffer for what we tell them to do, would there be a moral quandary there? I don't know.
Well, I thought you were talking about the Optimus robots, though, not genetically engineering humans. Unless that's what
Yeah.
Tesla's up to.
Well, I mean, imagine if they made the Optimus robots to have like emotional processing as part
They
of how
still
they
wouldn't
work,
be here. I still wouldn't care. I don't even know what
and
emotional
and they and
processing
they and
is.
they suffer. When I say emotional processing, I mean like in a way that we do, and then they are
Right,
capable
you'd
of
have to
suffering.
do like Tesla's not doing. They haven't. That's something
I
out of
know,
science fiction. You're adding in
but
something that they're not doing.
that's why nobody's mad at Tesla yet, because they know that Tesla's not going to make these things that will suffer for what we tell them to do.
Right, and until they do, it's to me, it's not. I don't even understand the debate. You're debating about something that they're not even doing.
No, I'm not. I'm pointing out that they're not doing it, and that's why it's not a debate,
Oh, okay. Okay, well, good. Hey,
right?
Leggy.
So the
Hello.
essence of what who asked about the was it Mr. B? Yeah, Mr. B. If it was ethical to genetically modify humans, it comes down to I think a lot of it comes down to is like how much are you modifying them? Because my guess would
I'm
be,
pretty sure the Chinese have figured out a way to reset the DNA.
oh boy,
I'm dead
Okay,
serious.
here.
I'm
Speaking of
not saying it as
stories,
a whatever. I'm pretty sure
what
there's been
makes you so
studies
certain?
done
Let's examine.
in into fucking to
What
genetically
YouTube
modify
from what
humans.
YouTube video does your certainty come from,
What are you talking about? Not YouTube land. Like
Alex?
this is
Well, you
shit
said
proven.
you're pretty certain, so I'm examining your certainty.
Well, I mean, I am a stoner, so I mean, I can
Oh, okay.
misrecall things. What I'm saying is, if I
I'm as certain
recall
as a stoner
correctly,
could be about this.
what I'm saying, if I recall correctly, throughout my life, at some point, I'm pretty sure I learned that. I'm pretty sure.
Okay,
Actually, I'm not sure. I know I have. So,
but you haven't learned it firsthand.
no, not firsthand.
So it was some story you picked up somewhere.
I mean, it's not really a story either. Wouldn't I mean?
Well, that's all I know it as so far is you telling me that they're doing this.
I mean, but they. It was something I read in one of them fucking. It was like a scientific, like fucking magazine, fucking article or something like that, and it was talking about how in China they've done over there in one of their medical research facilities. They've done testing and they've been able to manipulate the DNA so they can that way there when they do the uh in vitro fertilization or whatever they've learned how to give that egg certain qualities about it. They've learned how to manipulate the DNA so when they do it, I don't understand the science behind it. I just know I read it and they have done that as far as with the manipulating the egg for e- uh you know e- uh in vitro fucking fertilization or however the fuck they call it.
Okay. Well, I don't know about it. So I have your word to go
yeah,
on. But let's pretend it's
But
true
I mean,
and
you
at
also
some
have to.
point we will be
But
able
you
to
also have
genetically
to
modify
consider.
babies.
you also have a computer at your fingertips that you could do a quick fact check and see if it's
Yeah, I do. I guess I'm not motivated. But
just saying.
because I'm willing to grant you the possibility, so we don't have to argue about the details.
I mean, you always act like I'm a fucking retard, and you always go
No,
back to
I'm not,
YouTube.
Leggy.
Oh
I'm
no,
not
no!
acting
Every
like
time I
you're.
say something and I
Come
bring up
on
the
now. I
point,
don't
you
want you
always
feeling that
go
way.
to your fucking point is always, well, what YouTube video? Motherfucker, listen here. Just because I'm a dumb fucking down east hick in your fucking mind, I'm way smarter than you could ever fucking imagine.
I
My
know
brain
you're
fucking
smart,
cares
Leggy.
in
I don't
fucking
doubt
YouTube.
that. I
Like I
didn't mean
told
to.
you,
I didn't
how I
mean to
am on
push your
fucking
buttons.
how I am on fucking YouTube and how I am in real life are two fucking different things. It's like the basis of me is here, but I'm a little bit more amped up. I play into the good natured fucking dumb fucking quick witted fucking try to be funny class clown motherfucker instead of the fucking, the more nerdy fucking side of me. You know what I mean? I come over here and try to have the nerdy conversation, and you always go back to YouTube fucking conspiracy shit. Like that shit pisses me the fuck off. Like
Okay, look,
you
I
sitting here once
apologize.
again, fucking doubting my fucking intelligence. Like once again,
No,
if you have a
Leggy,
fucking
that's not what I
computer at your
doubted.
fucking hand, you could look it the fuck up. Point fucking blank, Jeff. Like point fucking blank. Like why would I come over here and blow smoke? Like I have heard that at some fucking point that they have
I
been doing
don't
fucking
doubt that
studies
you
in England.
have.
I mean the Chinese. I read fucking everything. My wife tells me all the time, "Why are you fucking watching stupid, boring shit?" To her, it's boring. To me, it's not.
I didn't
Just
call him dumb, Philip. I specifically said he wasn't. I acknowledged his intelligence. I apologize, but I would if it happened to be you, anybody that came on here and made some kind of claim like that, I would ask them where they got that from. So I wasn't
Yeah,
doing
but
anything
you always
different.
seem to me, you always go right to YouTube. Because, like, I
Well,
have in the
because you know
past
why?
fucking
Because a
shown
lot of
you.
times when I do ask you that, it turns out to be something you saw on YouTube. That's the
I
only
mean,
reason I
yeah, a
said
lot of
YouTube.
shit, but you can but I also know how to vent bullshit information from credible sources versus credible sources. You get my point? Like I can listen to something and be like, all right, this person knows because I make sure who the fuck they are. Like I'll look at a video, start watching it. If I feel it's bullshit, I'll turn it off. If I think it's credible, I'll look the person up and make sure it's a credible fucking person. Like it's somebody in that career field that does that study. Like that's the
Okay.
type of person I am. Like just saying, Jeff.
Well, I apologize, and I will try to stop making those assumptions in the future.
But anyway,
And
back to genetically modified foods.
well,
But
wait. I
yeah, I
want
mean,
to. I want
we
to.
probably can do it.
I want to catch up with Leggy and see how he's doing, or what he's up to. Are you driving?
Berto needs to show up. No, Berto don't need to show up over here.
No, Berto doesn't. He's not. Listen, Berto. He had his chance. He lasted like 10 seconds. He got on the block list, and he's not getting amnesty tomorrow. Tomorrow's amnesty day. Most of the trolls are coming off of block, but Berto will not be one of them.
Well,
I've seen enough of him on other panels. He's one note. I know what to expect from him.
Well, we got him to kind of chill out today. We got him somewhat mellow. He had a few periods of, but other than that, we got
Yeah,
him
I saw
chilling.
the one where they were saying he would make a good auctioneer.
Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, and who's ever? I mean, he could be an auctioneer, maybe. Who the fuck knows if he wanted to be? But that's not here. There. Back to the point is, you have the actual computer where I'm on the fucking cell phone. So that's all I'm saying. It's easier for you to fact check it versus me. That's all I'm saying. If you
Well,
doubt
yeah,
me,
but
or if
for
you're
the
questioning.
purpose of the debate that we were having, I don't even need to. I can just grant that. Let's suppose that's true. Because I think in the future we probably will be able to engineer babies at some point.
I
And
mean, we kind
so
of
the
already
debate was
do
on the
engineer
ethics of
babies.
it.
I mean, we kind of already do engineer babies in a way.
Here in the US.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, if you think about it, like when the women, like, it's not necessarily like, I guess it's a gene pool select. Like, women that do that a lot of times, if they're single mothers and stuff, they select through they look for certain characteristics that they want out of a gene pool of a man that they're hoping that will
So
come
they're
into.
like playing the odds.
Yeah.
They'll also look at the genetics of an embryo sometimes and determine if it has got developmental disorders. and sometimes people get abortions based on that. So there's a filtering process.
And the eggs, like the different eggs for fertilization are at different prices. If it's an Asian from Yale, it goes for $500,000 than
Hmm.
it is if it's just an ordinary white person.
Well,
And then black eggs are like $10,000.
God,
No, I'm not kidding.
I know, but
the
So people
consciousness.
select what eggs they want to get, like use in their in vitro.
yeah,
Because everybody wants the perfect baby. Like everybody wants their little golden baby child. So if
yeah, no,
science
I get it.
provides them a way to get that, they're going to want to take advantage of that.
No, I get it. If I could have children in a way that I can know they have no developmental issues and they'll basically only get my best genes and none of my bad ones. I mean, I don't see why I wouldn't pull that lever.
But then we get into that ethical question
Well,
of
We get into the movie Gattaca, basically.
what
You
happens in that
know, I
movie?
do know. Oh, sorry, Sean. Go ahead. Pardon me. Go ahead, Sean.
What happens in that movie, Joe?
In that movie, they started doing that, and then people being people formed, preferences based on that, and the genetically, because we're basically seeing it during the transition period, right, where there are some people who are born with genetic selection, but there's still people who are born without, and so the people with genetic selection have higher social status, and people without it are often subject to discrimination. Now they go crazy with it, where they completely screen people based on their genetic profile, and they like let them into a building based on that or not, and they don't actually. It's like they forgot that people are still capable of making decisions beyond what their genetics would imply. But yeah, it did show that there's potential for abuse. But the fact that Gattaca made a movie about it isn't gonna. No one's gonna look at Gattaca and say, "Oh well, you know what? I'm just gonna let my kid be born diseased." Nobody's gonna fucking say that.
yeah, Mr. B posted something about in Oregon, one of their universities, they altered human embryos with the mutation of a gene to counter a defect, some kind of cardiomyopathy defect.
So I'm saying they have made breakthroughs with fucking manipulating
Yeah, that
genes.
part I believe,
That's what I'm
and if
saying.
they haven't completely, I'm sure that they're.
And I believe China is like one of the countries on the forefront of that. I do believe. I really, really do believe.
That is going to be an ethical question or questions we're going to that like some generation in the very near future is going to have to deal with.
Yeah, they're
Like
gonna
just like
wrestle
right
with that.
now we're having to deal with the ethics of AI.
Yeah. Or like it's definitely gonna cause I expect it'll cause some kind of, we'll say, some disturbance in the force, right? Where people don't know how to deal with it all at once. And it's kind of like how, with young men today, right? You have the Lost Boys, and a lot of it has to do with there were changes in society that happened quickly and people haven't known how to deal with it. And then there's just a lot of these displaced men in modern society, and some sort of equivalent, I think, um, could easily happen when you get to a point where a lot of people have been born genetically enhanced, and there's still a lot of people who aren't being born that way or haven't been. And I don't know that we could do anything about it other than just get through it. I mean, if people are being born with better health outcomes and stuff, and they're good. I don't know why I would shut the door on that just because some people aren't going to all have it right away. Like I don't have health care. Do I think, oh, everyone else has to not have health care because I don't? No.
You don't have health care?
No.
They don't
Wait,
have
you have
expanded
public health care?
Medicaid where you are?
I'm not enrolled in any of it. I don't
Oh,
see it as being worth the cost.
like your health?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wait, you can't get public health care either?
It here it goes. It depends on the state. It goes state by state. Some states have it and some states don't. And the ones that have it, it's of different qualities, depending on how they
Look,
set their program
look,
up.
the United States is all about fucking greed when it comes to the medical system. So, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, just watch the movie John Q. That would explain
Which
it all.
movie?
John Q.
John Q.
Yeah, has Denzel Washington in it, and it's
I
based
remember
on
that
a true
movie.
story too. So, based on true events. So, yeah. But John Q does a pretty good job explaining pretty much, your health insurances and,
Oh
you
wow, he
know,
takes a hospital ER hostage in order for his son to receive a heart transplant. In fact, I think I might have seen this.
yeah, like it's
I,
based
I
on a
saw
true
it in
story.
school.
It's a true story. Yeah,
Oh
you
wow.
couldn't. I bet you wouldn't watch that movie in school today.
Probably not.
Fuck that, man. Some crazy man taking over a fucking hospital with guns and fucking shit. Yeah, no, that wouldn't happen today. Nope. Fuck no.
It was a good movie.
I mean, it was. I mean, it taught you a really valuable lesson. I watched another good movie the other day. Maybe I already told you this. Uh, Predestination has Ethan Hawke in it.
No,
Tell you-
that's
It,
what it's called.
yeah, Predestination. Yeah, and it's on. What was it on? Netflix? Maybe I watched it, and like pretty much spoil alert here, people.
Oh, don't
Uh,
spoil it too much.
well, I mean, I kind of have to. It's just kind. It
Oh,
kind of have.
it's
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 one of the
based
things.
on a Robert Heinlein story.
Yeah, well, I mean, I kind of have to. I mean,
Well,
it's
I
just,
might watch it though. Will it ruin the movie for me?
well, yeah. I mean, I guess it will.
Don't
But
because
now I
other
can't make my
viewers might
point,
not have
though.
seen it.
See,
I
now you're
don't
cutting me
ruin it for
off
the
to make my
audience.
goddamn point. Fuck.
Is there a way you could make it without spoiling?
Well, no, because I want
Well
to talk.
then, but no one's gonna watch the movie now.
Well, okay,
We're in a conundrum. It's an ethical dilemma.
okay. I'll give you 24 hours to watch it.
Well,
I
you
just
know we
look.
have New Year's coming up. Maybe.
Hey, Leggy. I just looked on the Wikipedia article for John Q. There's a section. You know how like some articles will have like a legacy section? Well, they have a legacy section. The only thing it says is after the killing of Brian Thompson, the film was mentioned in a number of articles about the incident. Oh man.
Some people, that's a good question, Philip. What exactly are the realistic ethical concerns of AI? Um, some people argue about the ethics of the algorithm, too.
Once again, I would refer the best if you want any information. I would refer to Brian Greene and the World Science Festival, and them talks about it. Those are probably the most front experts that he has talking about AI and all that. So that's just my suggestion. Just saying.
There's a whole discipline called AI ethics and machine ethics. Um, well, the algorithm's part of it. Algorithmic biases.
I just
A
feel
lot of it's biases, gender bias, political bias, whether it should be open source or not, AI transparency, accountability, regulation. Do robots have rights? Things like self-driving cars, and where does the liability fall? Here, Wikipedia has a whole write-up on it. The weaponization of AI.
Right. Well, I'm gonna go, guys. Nice conversation.
Yeah, Sean, good talking to you.
Yeah, good to
Thanks
see you,
for coming
Sean.
up. I'm sure they have Canadian algorithms. Not lost. Do you think? Does each country have its own algorithm? That's a good question, Mr. B. Or even just, can we just clone the organs? Like, do we even need to bother
I
creating
think they would
entire
just
humans?
clone. I think they would just clone the organs, and like they've done things where They had cloned little body parts and attached those, and they function.
I remember when they cloned that sheep,
Yeah. Well,
Dolly.
they this happened like 10 years ago or more by now, but they actually cloned like somebody's finger. Like someone lost like half their finger, and so they cloned the half that was lost, and they attached it, and it functions.
Jeff, by the way, this is kind of about the topic of what you had about the logic and reasoning and all reasonable.
Oh, this
Yeah,
video?
yeah. It's like
Yeah.
14 minutes
Okay, I'm
long.
gonna watch it. I'm gonna put in the chat too. It is a TED talk on the struggle between our powerful emotional brain and our logical brain.
I mean, so it talks about how, like, pretty much you have your brain still has the primitive, it's evolved, but it's only evolved to a certain extent. You still have the
Yeah,
primitive thoughts and the primitive things. And one of the most primitive things about the brain is when you look around your environment, you're constantly doing the whole fight and flight. That's the biggest thing with your brain. And then it's the way then, then it comes into nature versus nurture, the way naturally how your natural instincts versus the way you were brought up, the way you were nurtured, your environment, so
because
that
it's
plays a
still
big
like
role.
we're still in the jungle.
Yeah, I mean, you still have your primitive thoughts. Like if you took uh I imagine if you took on a deserted island, you had some children, couples that got marooned on an island, kind of like a Blue Lagoon type situation. If you're getting my drift here. I feel like if you had like that with a couple couples, though, eventually you could have enough generations that it would lead to being primal again, because your basic primal instincts would kick in. It's just like how, like, domesticated dogs and cats have been left out in the wild long enough to turn feral again.
Like Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, well, yeah, but Lord of the Flies were obviously probably fucking super inflamed and exaggerated. But yeah, something like that. But your natural primal
I think we
instinct.
see it in the Panelverse too. Like there's, I've seen Lord. It looks like a Lord of the Flies reversion.
I mean, because nowadays in society, nature versus nurture plays a big role into that. That right there plays a big role into a lot of things. So, because I mean, there's already the inklings that's already instinctive, and then as I said, your environment plays into how you decipher things and how you interpret things and how you act and all that.
Yeah,
So
that's that story. It's all story based too, depending on what stories,
it's
how your
just like
story got
dogs.
started.
I always say dogs. If there's a bad dog and a dog bites somebody, don't look at the dog, look at the owner. That's what
So, do
I
you think like all the drama trolls that disrupt YouTube, you think they had bad nurture, like bad upbringings,
no.
or is there
I just
something
think
about their nature that they would just do
no.
that
I just
anywhere?
think some of them. I just think some people are just naturally jackasses. Some people are just naturally funny. People try to be the smartest person in the room. Some people just try to be themselves. Some people try to be something they're not. It's a big smorgasbord of fucking characters on YouTube. Some people are as they are. Some people aren't as they aren't. It all depends what panel you're on too. Like with me, it all depends on what panel I am. It's depending on how I'm. Well, I mean, I talk pretty much the same, but
So you're
there's
able
the
to kind of
differences.
choose and
Yeah.
switch it around.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than my fucking personal life and who I interact with. Do you think I talk to my parents the same way as I
I
do?
kind of, I just kind of assume
Like, look,
you're.
as soon as I drop an F bomb, my dad, there ain't no need to swear, as he proceeds to drop about 5 F bombs. So I think it's fucking hilarious. But, the same point is I do it, like, especially if I'm talking to my mom. Oh no, my dad will have a meltdown if I swear at my mother. He thinks automatically I'm pissed off and I'm doing so, like, he's like, that's it, no need to ride your mother's ass, stop being, no swearing. I'm like, dad, everything's fine, what the fuck you talking about, just calm down. Oh shit.
So then it sounds like it could be nature or nurture in any particular case. It's hard to
I mean,
tell.
but as I said, then certain things you got your fight or flight instinct, which, as I said, that plays into the role of nature versus nurture. If you grew up in a more aggressive environment, eh, you're more predestined to be a more aggressive person than not. But it also may, but the upside, it also may teach you what aggressiveness does and the negative outcome to that.
That's true.
Yeah. What were they saying? I think like rice. So there's a difference between wild rice. The biggest difference between wild rice and domesticated rice is the thickness of like where like the actual grain like hooks to the plant itself, if that makes sense. Like that itself is wild rice is pretty much meant to break off easy and spread its seed so it can grow. Where domesticated rice has been grown in such a way that over the years that the seed has mutated to where it grows into the plant that it is now.
From human interference.
Yeah, yeah. But I can't remember how long, but it wouldn't take long if you left rice, domesticated rice, to go back to wild rice. I
Oh,
feel like
real?
it's
Like it
like
just on its own, it would
yeah,
revert
it will
back.
naturally, yeah. If you left it unattended, eventually it would naturally, I do believe, revert back to as close to what it could as possible. Yeah, yes, now, but the subgenome of it is all the same though. It all dates back to it all has domesticated rice has its origins to wild rice.
And I honestly don't know. Is Uncle Ben's wild?
I mean, do
That's
you
wild.
really
Uncle
think
Ben's, huh?
domesticated rice
Uncle
just
Ben's wild
appeared?
rice.
I mean, let's think about it. Do you really think domesticated rice just appeared?
Oh, this is
Domesticated
where I
seed.
feel
I'm
get to
not just
feel
talking about.
stupid because I have
I was
no
just
idea.
using rice as an example, but I'm talking about any domesticated seed versus wild seed in general. Like you look at strawberries, look at cultivated strawberries versus wild strawberries. Look at the size difference. Look at wild blueberries versus cultivated blueberries. Like there's always a size difference. Like even here where you got your plants that have more water to them, has is closer to the irrigation systems and all that. They're a much bigger berry overall because they're getting that extra water that they naturally wouldn't get. You know what I mean? So there is certain things that humans do to plants and crops to make them grow bigger
Oh
uh,
yeah,
and all
yeah,
that.
and
Like you know what I
animals.
mean? That they
Yeah, that
wouldn't
that's
naturally do on their own. You know what I mean? And I was just using rice as an example, and rice did come from wild rice and did eventually get domesticated back way, way in ancient times.
and so if we
Race,
stop
wild race. Did I say
interfering with it,
race?
then it
Did
goes
I
back.
say what? If I did, hey, I probably did. Who the fuck knows? I get talking, not quite as fast as Berto, but I do get talking and miss say words. It happens. Fuck, that's the down east ticking me. Fuck, I admit it.
Oh, leggy.
Fuck, I admit it. Anyways, yes, yes.
Um, he's he's wondering if white rice and wild rice were different species. Well, let's. You know what?
Yeah,
Let's look it up
but there's more.
because I honestly don't know. I'm so embarrassed. I was president of my 4-H club in school, and I'm so embarrassed I don't know all this stuff.
I'm not saying that they're the same plant now, but originally rice was a wild plant originally that was domesticated. It was a crop.
Um, let's see. I'm getting a lot of nutritional differences, but not the development of it.
Just type in the domestication of rice.
That's a good thing. Yes.
And I never actually said white rice. I just said rice. Just saying.
Ah. Good catch. Oh Lord. The complex history of the domestication. It goes back 8,000 to 8,000 BC.
Yeah.
Oriza sativa. Oh, interesting. This is way more complicated than
Yeah, I mean,
we realize.
it's way.
I might
But
have to
what I'm
get the
saying
AI
is,
involved.
rice was domesticated though eventually, and what I'm trying to get at is a wild seed versus a domesticated seed. The stalk on it that holds the fruit or whatever you want to call the seed in place is thinner on a wild seed versus a uh domesticated seed like that because of the way it spreads and shit. Not
Wild rice developed in North America. Oh, and parts of Asia. And it says it's a different plant, but it's grouped with rice due to its grain-like seeds. And it has not been domesticated to the same degree as white rice. Um, White rice is a polished form of domesticated Oriza sativa or Oriza glaberrima, the primary rice species cultivated worldwide. And it began around 10,000 years ago, in China and West Africa. Uh, it it comes out of brown rice. It looks like wild rice is a separate plant.
But all I'm trying to get at is that that it would revert back eventually to its roots if left alone. Like I don't know how long it would take. It would probably take centuries and centuries and centuries, but eventually it would revert back. Nature takes over. No matter if it has a will, it has a way. So
Let's see, the AI is saying no.
know what?
Um, that it would not. Let's see, it would not white. This time about white rice would not revert back to its wild state because the process of domestication involved genetic changes in it that are largely irreversible. However, if cultivated rice were abandoned and allowed to grow without human intervention, it might evolve into a feral or weedy form over time. So it would turn into like a new wild form, but it wouldn't go back to the original wild form.
That's what I've said. I said that it would probably not go back because of whatever, but it would go back as close to wild as it could. You know what I mean? I did state that in earlier. If you go back and listen.
Right. So whatever domestication we did to it would wear off, and it would do its own thing from that point and
Yeah,
turn into something else.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean,
that makes sense.
it would turn back to a wild form of some sort to just keep living.
Oh, not
So,
loss. Go. Yes, he was Uncle Ben, along with Erastus and Aunt Jemima. But somehow Mrs. Butterworth, the white lady, skated by. So doesn't that like
Orlando
undermine
likes
their
John.
whole racism
Orlando likes
narrative, where the one brand that's white gets to stick around
no
and
more
all the
man
black
in
people
the
get
middle.
removed?
Yes,
I don't.
yes, yes, yeah.
I don't think he's saying that. Are you? Like
No,
humans
no, no. I'm
work.
just saying though. Eventually though, like people would, if you left alone and a civilization, I think, like on a deserted island, say something happened where there was enough people there where you could have a couple generations before it died off. I feel like at the end they would be back to as primitive as possible. You know, because they wouldn't know any other way. You get my point? They wouldn't know any other
Like in
way
that
other
movie
than.
Nail.
I mean, Castaway kind of nails it on the head. The best, really. With Tom Hanks, I mean, your primitive instincts eventually do kick in. If you have half a brain and half of a survival instinct, already it'll just kick the fuck in, and you'll just know what to do naturally. Not
Um,
gonna say you're gonna succeed. Not saying you're
yeah,
gonna.
unless you're over nurtured, maybe, and you're too civilized. But who knows? It's hard
No,
to
I.
say.
It,
I think
it,
it would be at the individual level. I think some people their primal instincts would still be intact and take over. And
I
some
mean,
people would be so civilized that they would just be useless.
look at them tribes they find in the Amazon and shit that hasn't had but very limited human contact, if ever, really. I do believe there's some tribes they've stumbled across that had never had human, within the last, say, 20 years. You know what I mean? So to think about that there's tribes that live in the jungle still, in fucking huts that their ancestors had passed down the techniques of building centuries over, oh, generation over generation over generation, over the centuries, over the millenniums. You know what I mean?
Like in the Emerald Forest.
Sure. Don't ask me names of things, Jeff, because I can't tell you.
Uh, well,
Like,
I could tell you even less. I don't know either.
so, but it is just fascinating that there is still people like that out there, and I mean it's all primitive things and things they've learned throughout the generations that they've handed down. Trade secrets, if you would.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it. You take most hunters today and put them down in the Amazon and have them go hunt the way them guys do. A lot of them guys would probably strike the fuck out. I mean, I could probably make some snare traps and some fucking fall pits and shit like that there. But I don't know if I could fucking spear hunt and fucking throw a spear and kill a fucking running boar or something like them motherfuckers do. And shit like that, you know what I mean?
Well, even in the New World, I think like we learned a lot from the Indians about how to hunt the animals here.
Well, yeah, but that's also because at that point we will domesticate it, if you will. We might not have been modernized as we think today, but we weren't primitive either. Like, they had as many amenities as you possibly could have at that point in time because they've set up the infrastructure and all that.
Mr. B, it looks like they decided to cut out a trans storyline that they were going to go with. I'm reading about it now, but I don't know if they're removing all of their DEI. There's a movie called Win or Lose that had a transgender storyline, and they decided to pull it.
Nope.
People are the trans stuff is just not selling like it used to, I guess.
Well, people are over it.
People are over it. Yep, I was over it before it started. I think the trans kids are going to be fine. They were fine before. They're going to be fine going forward.
Well, my biggest issue is the sports thing. That's all. I mean, really.
How old is your youngest?
My youngest is 4.
What if she came out as trans? What would you do?
Uh, Jeff, I can't answer that question because one, she's only 4, and so hopefully I got many, many years to think about that.
You might not.
So, but I don't want to think about that. And oh well, I can tell you what. If she tried this shit as a kid, that shit ain't happening. Nah, no. No, 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 no. I mean, I guess when she got to be 18 out of high school and on her own, I guess she could do what the fuck she want. How and it would always still be a her to me, no matter what. I don't give a fuck. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That's just how I am. I'm, if I had to answer now, that's gonna be my answer.
Yeah, you're never really gonna know till you're faced with it, I guess.
I mean, my kid, who's now in 8th grade, a couple years ago, was running around saying she was a lesbian and all this shit, and I just like shook my head and go, "You ain't fucking anything yet." Like 12. I go, "You ain't anything.
That's when I
You don't even know
started.
what the fuck being a lesbian means. Like, get the fuck out." Yes, it does.
Don't
Mean I
don't
like.
girls develop before I developed around 12 or 11,
I don't know.
11ish. And girls I think are a little bit earlier than that, so she might know at 12. Not laws. They have the same health care all the rest of us do. Like nobody, no trans person goes to the doctor. The doctor says, "I'm sorry, you're trans. I'm not serving you
I
today."
mean, and if they are, I mean, technically it's an ethics violation, and therefore they'd get disbarred anyways. And I do believe there could be criminal
Right.
charges.
He means they can't get
But
puberty blockers and
well, I do feel like things like that is a little bit different. I do believe that's different. So
which I don't know why that's even a thing. Like everybody has to go through puberty. I don't know why people think all of a sudden puberty became this trauma that everyone's trying to avoid.
I mean,
Even if you're trans, puberty's not. But it's something about hey, Dagmar. It's something about it makes it easier to transition as an adult. I guess if they can, like whatever develops during puberty, if they can postpone that, then it makes the adult transition easier. But
yeah, maybe.
that's
Who the fuck knows? What if the dude? What if my biggest thing? Okay, so it's gonna be a dude who all of a sudden changes his mind, but then realizes
right,
he's
because
going
it
through a
the
very
puberty
small.
happens at such an early age. By the time you hit adulthood and ready to transition, you're going to have gone through an entire developmental arc, which you may not even be in the same mindset. So it's
All right, Jeff. By the way, I have a confession. So I've picked up a hobby. You know how I said I don't video game? I've picked up a hobby. My kid has this VR headset, and she has what's called Beat Saber on it. Dude, that fucking game's badass. Uh, and uh, dude, I'm fucking addicted to it.
wait,
It's
what
like
was the hobby?
fucking playing fucking Beat Saber on fucking the
Beat
VR headset.
Saber?
The Beat Saber, yeah, dude. Dude, it's fucking badass. Dude, it's
I'm
like
looking it
Fruit
up now.
Ninja meets fucking Guitar Hero. It's fucking awesome. Fucking awesome. Dude, my kid's fucking badass. She plays on expert and shit, and she gets like fucking perfect scores. Dude,
Oh
it's
my
fucking.
god, it does look cool. You're playing it now?
Well, yeah, I gotta go inside. It's my turn.
Oh.
The wife was gonna flash the light when it was my turn, so.
Well, good. At least your family's playing it too. Y'all can bond over it.
Well, we do. We do. We.
But this what I'm watching now is this little white girl, you know, little like schoolgirl. She's really annoying me. I need to find a more manly version of it. Oh wow, it looks like Tron. You have to hit the things out of the air, set to music.
Yeah. Yeah, I said it's like fucking Fruit Ninja meets Guitar Hero. Badass. But, all right, I'm out of here. Goodbye.
Okay, good luck, Leggy. Take care. Happy New Year's. Be safe. See, I didn't even think of that. I don't have that kind of brain. All right, I guess that's it for today. That was a pretty decent panel. I learned a lot and enjoyed myself as usual. A fresh stuff. Hey, Mr. B, I'm doing a New Year's Eve. We're ringing in New Year. I'm releasing most of the trolls that got blocked. It's an Amnesty Day, so they can join the party. And then an all-day New Year's stream. So if you're around, stop by and say hi. And that goes for all the rest of you as well. If I don't see you, have a great New Year. Tomorrow's the last day of 2024. Oh, and tomorrow is when I have my appointment. So I'm going to stop by and get some fries on the way back. So that's going to start my New Year's Eve. So be here for that if you want. Otherwise, come and catch us ringing in the new year and help us out. All right, take care, everybody. I will see you tomorrow on New Year's Eve.